In the quiet hallway of a high-end apartment, the air feels heavy with unease. Kurokochi Keita, a man whose disheveled appearance and surgical mask make him look more like a criminal than a cop, steps inside. Waiting for him is a trembling Bungo Goda MP, his eyes wide with terror behind his glasses as he points toward the back of the room. The sight inside is grisly. Rina Akamatsu, a high-profile hostess, lies dead on her bed, the sheets stained with the aftermath of a brutal attack. Kurokochi Keita observes the scene with a chilling lack of emotion, noting that the killer clearly didn't pull any punches. Instead of calling for backup, Kurokochi Keita turns his interrogation on Bungo Goda MP. He probes the politician with uncomfortably personal questions about his relationship with the victim, watching the man squirm as the weight of the scandal begins to sink in. Kurokochi Keita isn't looking for the truth. He's looking for leverage. He reminds Bungo Goda MP of everything he has to lose: his influence, his reputation, and his wealth. He asks with a mocking tilt of his head if this is the first time the politician has been involved in something so messy. With a casual, almost friendly demeanor, Kurokochi Keita tells the panicked politician to leave everything to him. To the desperate Bungo Goda MP, it sounds like a lifeline, but he's about to realize that dealing with Kurokochi comes with a steep price. The inspector cuts straight to the point. He wants to know where the money is. He knows Bungo Goda MP has a hidden stash of cash somewhere in the apartment, and he's not leaving until he gets his hands on it. As he leans in with a wide, gap-toothed grin, Kurokochi Keita makes his philosophy clear. He doesn't work for free, and he certainly doesn't care about the law. He is a predator in a suit, thriving in the shadows of the city's corruption. Later that morning, the official forensic team finally arrives to process the scene. The room is now a flurry of activity, with cameras flashing and investigators meticulously documenting every bloodstain and piece of evidence in the ransacked apartment. The senior detectives discuss the grim details. The victim died from blunt force trauma around 1 a.m., but the way the scene was handled before they arrived feels off. They sense they're dealing with something far more complicated than a simple burglary. Walking into this den of corruption is Shingo Sik, a young, elite superintendent with a reputation for being an unyielding idealist. He arrives with a sharp focus, ready to lead the investigation with the integrity he believes the badge represents. As Shingo Sik is briefed, the officers point out the contradictions at the scene. While the apartment was ransacked to look like a robbery, the fact that the victim had just had sex points to a much more personal and premeditated crime. The investigation reveals that the victim, Rina Akamatsu, was a hostess at a high-end club frequented by politicians and celebrities. This isn't just a murder case anymore. It's a political landmine waiting to explode. Evidence begins to surface in the form of photos showing Rina with Bungo Goda MP, the leader of the majority party in parliament. The detectives realize they are treading on dangerous ground as they wrap up their work at the crime scene. As Shingo Sik heads out, he notices a suspicious man standing behind the police tape, casually reading a newspaper about Governor Sayatari. When questioned, the man claims he was just visiting a madam who lives in the building, ignoring the gravity of the police presence. Shingo Sik isn't buying the story. He stops the man, threatening to use force if necessary. The stranger looks at him with an annoying, mocking expression, clearly unimpressed by the young superintendent's authority. The two men lock eyes in a tense face-off. Shingo Sik sees a disheveled, untrustworthy individual, while the other man stares back with a cynical, world-weary gaze that suggests he's seen everything the dark side of the city has to offer. The tension evaporates into a mocking laugh as the man flips open his badge. He is Kurokochi Keita from the 2nd Brigade, the detective Shingo Sik was assigned to monitor. Sik is left speechless, his eyes wide with shock as he realizes this scruffy man is his new partner. Kurokochi Keita's casual attitude toward the murder is infuriating. He mockingly laments the death of his cute Rina, while Shingo Sik can only watch in disbelief, wondering how a man like this could ever be in charge of organized crime investigations. Despite his disdain, Shingo Sik follows his new partner back into the room. Kurokochi Keita immediately begins searching with a strangely focused intent, acting as if he already knows exactly what he's looking for. Kurokochi Keita leads him to a safe hidden behind shelf. He seems more interested in the state of the safe than the victim itself, questioning whether its contents are still intact. To Shingo Sik's surprise, the safe is already unlocked. They swing it open, but the mechanical click only leads to a disappointing hollow sound. The safe has been completely cleaned out. Kurokochi Keita estimates that at least 100 million yen was taken. Shingo Sik is stunned by the amount, realizing that this wasn't just a crime of passion, but a high-stakes theft of dirty political funds. Kurokochi Keita lays it all out. The money was a slush fund, and Rina was the mistress of Bungo Goda, MP. While Shingo Sik tries to process the information, Kurokochi looks on with a bored expression, as if this level of corruption is just another Tuesday for him. Kurokochi Keita then drops a massive bombshell, casually revealing that he was actually at the apartment the night before to pressure Goda about the missing money. His crude mention of the couple's intimate timing leaves Shingo Sik reeling, but the veteran inspector is clearly just getting started with his revelations. Determined to act on this new lead, Shingo Sik prepares to bring Goda in for questioning immediately. However, Kurokochi Keita's sudden, heavy silence suggests that he's holding back one final detail, something that will completely upend Sik's understanding of the case. Kurokochi Keita drops a bombshell on his young partner. He claims that when he and his mysterious associate left, Rina was perfectly fine, and he stayed with Goda until the morning, effectively giving the suspect an ironclad alibi. With a mockingly innocent expression, Kurokochi Keita laughs as he realizes the absurdity of the situation. He just provided the main suspect with a perfect alibi. Shingo Sik can only stare in disbelief at the sheer audacity of this man. Later, at the police headquarters, Shingo Sik is still reeling. He's greeted by a colleague, Kazumasa, who seems all too aware of the troublesome case the young officer has been assigned. Shingo's mind is a whirlwind of suspicion and frustration. The reality of his situation sinks in as his colleague describes Kurokochi Keita in no uncertain terms. He is the dirtiest cop in the entire force, a real crook who operates in a league of his own. Shingo can't believe such a man is allowed to wear a badge. Shingo Sik is baffled. If everyone knows Kurokochi Keita is corrupt, how has he not been fired? The answer is chilling. The 2nd Brigade has amassed a trove of compromising information on the highest-ranking politicians in the country, making Kurokochi untouchable. Shingo Sik is summoned to the commissioner's office. Commissioner Dojima, looking stern behind his glasses, confirms that despite the alibi, Bungo Goda, MP, remains their primary suspect. He then shocks Shingo by asking him to officially team up with Kurokochi. Shingo Sik asks the hard question, is Kurokochi Keita one of those people the police use to stay on good terms with politicians? He insists that this time, the inspector himself is a suspect and shouldn't be trusted. Commissioner Dojima explains his real intention. He wants Shingo Sik to team up with Kurokochi, but not for the sake of the investigation. He wants Shingo to follow his every move. He knows Kurokochi is smart, but he believes the young officer is the key to catching him. The mission is clear. Commissioner Dojima tells Shingo Sik that since Kurokochi knows nothing about him, he has no leverage. Shingo must wait for the corrupt inspector to slip up and then bring back his badge to clear the department's name. Back in the field, Shingo Sik meets Kurokochi Keita in a luxury hotel lobby. Kurokochi is as unbothered as ever, mockingly apologizing for any inconvenience he might have caused the young officer while checking his hair. As they stand in the opulent hall, Shingo Sik wonders what they're doing in such an expensive place. Kurokochi Keita casually mentions he spent the night there because he was in a hurry before leading Shingo to go get his car. Suddenly, a sleek red Ferrari 458 Italia roars into view, tearing through the city streets with a thunderous engine. It's a display of wealth that is completely out of place for a police officer. Inside the supercar, Shingo Sik is speechless. When he asks where a cop got such a car, Kurokochi Keita simply laughs and says it was a gift, admitting that his meager police salary would never cover it. He then mocks Shingo, saying he pities him for working in the 1st Brigade. Kurokochi Keita starts probing Shingo Sik's knowledge of politics. The young officer is still too stunned by the Ferrari to focus, while Kurokochi's gaze remains fixed on the road, hinting that politics is the real game they're playing. The inspector pulls out a newspaper showing that the current Governor Sayatari is leading the polls. He reminds Shingo Sik that these elections will determine the next precinct commissioner, showing how deep the political connections go. They drive past a campaign rally for Hiroshi Tamiya, a popular newcomer. Kurokochi Keita suddenly decides to make a detour to see someone, leaving Shingo Sik more suspicious than ever as the red Ferrari pulls up to a park. The detour leads them to a meeting with Mr. Hashimoto, a high-ranking politician. Kurokochi Keita wastes no time, asking about the governor's chances for a 3rd mandate, and if Tamiya poses a real threat to their plans. In the shade of the trees, Kurokochi Keita drops another piece of intel. Bungo Goda, MP, Hashimoto's old colleague, is about to betray the governor and support Tamiya. Shingo Sik watches from the car, alert to every word of this secret meeting. Kurokochi Keita dismisses the betrayal as just a rumor, but quickly shifts the conversation to this month's payment. He reaches out his hand, making his demands clear while reminding Hashimoto that Goda told him some interesting stories. Kurokochi Keita takes a long drag of his cigarette, his eyes narrowing as he receives his payoff. He promises to keep his mouth shut as long as the payments in his name continue, leaving the politician looking terrified. Back in the Ferrari, Shingo Sik is horrified as he watches Kurokochi Keita toss the bag of money into the back seat. When Kurokochi calls it his monthly allowance for making charges disappear for Hashimoto, Sik can barely contain his disgust at this blatant corruption. The detour isn't over. They arrive at the office of another man, Hatakeyama, who looks furious as Kurokochi Keita confronts him. The inspector is relentless, pushing everyone's buttons as he moves through his list of targets. Kurokochi Keita leans back on the sofa, reminding Hatakeyama that the statute of limitations for drug trafficking is 5 years. Shingo Sik stands in the background, his mind racing as he hears the inspector bring up such a serious criminal past. With a cold, calculating grin, Kurokochi Keita offers Hatakeyama a way out, if he can force Tamiya to withdraw from the election. The man's desperate fury at being blackmailed only amuses the inspector, whose mocking laughter echoes through the room as he toyed with another life. Kurokochi Keita walks off humming a Johnny tune, completely indifferent to the lives he has just manipulated. But behind him, the silent tension is finally reaching a breaking point as Shingo Sik, trembling with disgust, stares at the fucking leech he's now forced to call partner. Shingo Sik's idealistic world is shattering before his eyes. He screams at Kurokochi Keita, his voice filled with pure, righteous fury, asking if the man is truly rotten to his very core for taking such a blatant bribe. Disgusted by the corruption, Shingo Sik grabs the bag of money, threatening to report the inspector immediately. Kurokochi Keita, however, is more concerned with his dough than his reputation, looking genuinely distressed as the cash spills across the floor. The tension between the partners reaches a boiling point. As Shingo Sik fumes, Kurokochi Keita remains cold and analytical, revealing that Goda and Hashimoto aren't just random politicians. They're the governor's closest and most powerful allies. Kurokochi Keita's gaze is heavy as he drops a bombshell. He mentions a brutal family massacre from a few years back and chillingly suggests that Governor Sayatari himself was the one pulling the strings behind the scenes. In the dim light of the garage, Kurokochi Keita's cynical worldview is laid bare. He tells a stunned Shingo Sik that the corruption doesn't just stop at a few dirty cops. It goes all the way to the very top of the system, where the highest echelons are the most corrupt. The realization hits Shingo Sik like a physical blow. His eyes are wide, his mouth agape, as he stares at the man who has just turned his entire understanding of justice and the police force upside down. The scene shifts to a grim memory of 5 years ago. Soji Toyama, a web designer, along with his wife and their 10-year-old daughter, were all brutally assassinated in what appeared to be a professional hit. The bodies were left in a pool of blood, a haunting testament to the killer's cold efficiency. It was a nightmare that shook the community. Despite living in a quiet, peaceful neighborhood, not a single person heard a thing as the family was executed, each victim receiving 2 precise shots to the head from a pistol. The investigators were left with a crime scene as silent as the victims themselves. Back in the present, Kurokochi Keita sheds his trench coat as they enter his home. He casually invites Shingo Sik to make himself at home, his nonchalance contrasting sharply with the dark, blood-soaked stories he's been telling. Shingo Sik stands in the middle of a lavishly decorated room, but he isn't looking at the decor. His eyes are fixed on the strange contrast of luxury and coldness, realizing that Kurokochi Keita's home is as mysterious and unsettling as the man himself. The sheer opulence of the apartment is another shock for Shingo Sik. When he asks how a cop can afford such a place, Kurokochi Keita simply smirks and tells him that if he starts accepting bribes too, he could easily afford this lifestyle. On the walls, massive speakers point toward the center of the room like silent sentinels. As Shingo Sik examines the security feeds, he notices something odd. The monitors aren't just for the apartment. They cover various angles of the exterior, showing that Kurokochi Keita is watching every approach to his home with high-tech vigilance. Over a bottle of Coke, the conversation turns back to the Toyama case. Kurokochi Keita dismisses the random maniac theory, asking Shingo Sik what he really thinks about a crime that remains officially unsolved despite the evidence. He drinks deeply, as if the memory is something he needs to wash down. Kurokochi Keita goes into gruesome detail about the ballistics of the case. He explains that while .22 caliber bullets do very little damage on a body shot, they rebound inside the skull like ping-pong balls when they hit the head, ensuring an instant and quiet death. Shingo listens, horrified as a bottle of Coca-Cola becomes a chilling prop in the detective's explanation. He then demonstrates the most chilling part of his theory. By using a half-full bottle as a makeshift suppressor, a killer could execute an entire family without making a sound that would alert the neighbors. Shingo Sik can only stare, wondering what kind of mind thinks of such things. Shingo Sik tries to visualize a professional assassin, perhaps Yakuza or a foreign hitman. But Kurokochi Keita's expression is unreadable as he prepares to reveal a truth that is far more disturbing than any criminal underworld hit. With cold, unwavering eyes, Kurokochi Keita delivers the final blow to Shingo Sik's faith in the police force. He reveals his true belief. The person who murdered the Toyama family wasn't a professional criminal. It was a cop. "Are you insane?" Shingo Sik shouts, refusing to believe that one of their own could be a mass murderer. But Kurokochi Keita just points to the monitors, telling his partner that he's about to show him exactly what he means. On the screen, 2 shadowy figures are seen lurking outside. On the monitor, the shadows come to life. 2 men wearing eerie, smiling masks emerge from the trees, and they aren't just carrying pistols. They're armed with heavy, military-grade weaponry. They look more like toy store nightmares than human assassins. Kurokochi Keita's eyes widen with a twisted kind of excitement as he identifies the guns. Fully automatic AA-12 shotguns. He reveals that he used their earlier meetings as bait to lure these very suspects into his home, knowing they couldn't resist the chance to silence him. Shingo is terrified at the thought of being ripped to shreds. Shingo Sik is paralyzed with fear as he realizes the entire day was a setup, and he was the unwitting passenger. Kurokochi Keita's grin is terrifying as he confirms that the hitmen fell for his trap, hook, line, and sinker. He remembers the stories Goda told him about the governor, realizing they've just stepped into a war. Panic sets in for the young superintendent. Shingo Sik desperately tries to call for backup, but Kurokochi Keita just sighs, telling him there's no signal around these parts. He tells Seek to turn off the lights and put in some earplugs, warning him that guns make a lot of noise. Shingo screams in despair. We're doomed. The hitmen enter the apartment, their heavy footsteps echoing through the dark halls as they search for their targets. Shingo, Seek, and Kurokochi Keita huddle behind a sofa, Seek's heart pounding in his chest as Kurokochi calmly pulls out a remote control. A single beep signals the start of the counterattack. With a single press of a button, the trap is finally sprung. A thunderous wall of sound blasts from the high-end speakers, the sudden sonic assault completely disorienting the masked hitmen in the darkness. Amidst the jarring chaos, Kurokochi Keita stands up with cold deliberation, his revolver leveled and ready to deliver a final, deadly response to the intruders. Taking advantage of the confusion, Kurokochi Keita pulls the trigger. A single, precise shot catches one of the hitmen square in the head, sending a spray of blood into the air as the masked figure collapses instantly. Shingo Seek can only watch in absolute, numbing horror as his partner executes the intruder without a second thought, unaware that the true nightmare is about to be revealed as the smoke clears. The smoke from the shootout clears, revealing a grisly and heart-wrenching scene. As Shingo Seek looks down at the bodies, he is met with a shocking realization. The masked hitmen were none other than his own colleagues, Inspector Shima and Chief Inspector Kazumasa Goto. Kurokochi Keita leans in with a twisted, toothy smirk, asking Shingo if he still thinks he's the most rotten cop in the force after seeing this betrayal. The room is heavy with the weight of the department's betrayal. Kurokochi Keita explains that to keep him silent, people give him more than just money. They give him information. He pulls out a weathered photograph from the Toyama case, a dark relic from a funeral 5 years ago that holds the key to the current political nightmare. Shingo Seek stares at the photo in disbelief, his mind racing to connect the names. He sees funeral wreaths from Governor Kazunari Sayatari, Bungo Goda, MP, and Toshihiro Hashimoto. He can't understand why these 3 high-ranking politicians would send flowers to a simple freelance web designer like Soji Toyama, unless the connection was far more dangerous. The pieces of the puzzle begin to fit together with terrifying precision. Kurokochi Keita reveals that Toyama wasn't just a designer. He had worked for the governor and found compromising information after becoming too curious about certain confidential emails. His curiosity, it seems, was a death sentence for his entire family. The story grows darker as Kurokochi Keita brings up another unsolved case from 15 years ago, the brutal death of a 16-year-old high school girl whose body was abandoned in a landfill. He reveals a chilling detail. His sources saw her entering a hotel with an influential politician right before she vanished. Shingo listens, his face pale with horror. The truth is a grotesque nightmare that spans over a decade. Kurokochi Keita reveals that Sayatari, who was a member of parliament at the time, had predatory tendencies, and Goda and Hashimoto, his secretaries back then, were the ones who helped him cover up the girl's death and silence the Toyama family when they got too close to the secret. Kurokochi Keita lights a cigarette, the smoke curling around his face like a shroud. He admits that this is the real reason he approached Bungo Goda. MP, he wasn't just after money. He was searching for Soatari's ultimate weakness. Shingo Seek can only watch in silence, horrified by the depth of his partner's cold-blooded manipulation. With a chilling laugh, Kurokochi Keita shows Shingo his untraceable pistol, a gift from Yakuza contact. He dismisses Shingo's concerns about the risks and the illegal disposal of the hitmen's bodies, insisting that they need to move immediately to question Goda before the governor can finish erasing the remaining witnesses. They drive through the night to Bungo Goda MP's sprawling mansion, the red Ferrari cutting a lonely path through the dark. The house stands silent, an imposing fortress of political secrets that they are about to breach without a warrant or backup. Kurokochi Keita doesn't bother with the front gate. He leaps over the high wall with the ease of a practiced intruder, leaving a hesitant Shingo Seek to scramble after him. To Shingo, This is blatant trespassing, but he knows that in the world his partner inhabits, the rules are merely suggestions. "Inspector, wait a second," he pleads, but the older man is already moving. They find the side door unlocked, another ominous sign of what's to come. As they creep through the dark hallways, Shingo Seek calls out for Mr. Goda, his voice echoing in the empty, hollow space. Kurokochi Keita remains professional and cold, pulling on his gloves and telling the young superintendent to save his breath and not touch a single thing. He knows they're too late. They find him in the main room, a sight that freezes Shingo Seek in his tracks. Bungo Goda, MP, is hanging from the ceiling, his lifeless body a grim punctuation mark to his corrupt career. Kurokochi Keita looks on with a detached, almost clinical curiosity, wondering aloud if he was a bit too hard on him yesterday. As Shingo Seek stands in shock, Kurokochi Keita begins discovering evidence with suspicious timing. He pulls a document from his jacket, claiming it's a witness testimony Goda gave him just the day before. Shingo is incredulous, staring at the papers and demanding to know what kind of elaborate game the inspector is playing now. Shingo's mind is racing. So he was in that luxury hotel? The document is a full, devastating confession from Bungo Goda, MP. It details how 15 years ago, Governor Kazunari Sayatari accidentally provoked the death of a young girl during sexual intercourse and then hired corrupt policemen to assassinate Soji Toyama and his family to bury the secret forever. Shingo reads the words, his heart hammering against his ribs. Shingo Seek can hardly believe what he's holding. He looks at Kurokochi Keita, who is leaning back with a smug expression, and asks how he could possibly have gotten Goda to write such a last-minute confession. Kurokochi admits with a whistle that he simply hid Goda's involvement in Rina's murder, trading one crime for a confession of another. "Someone pinch me," Shingo mutters, overwhelmed by the darkness. The implications of the document are staggering. Shingo Seek wants to call his colleagues and arrest Hashimoto and Sayatari immediately, but Kurokochi Keita just mocks his naivety. He reminds Seek that the police department can't simply arrest an acting governor, no matter how much of a piece of shit he is. "You're awfully naive for a chief inspector," he sneers. However, Kurokochi Keita says, his eyes glinting with the triumph of a master manipulator. He pulls out a remote and turns on the television, while Shingo Seek waits with bated breath for the next turn in this twisted political game. The inspector's gaze is fixed on the screen, ready for the payoff. The news broadcast is a political earthquake that shakes the foundations of the city. It announces that Hiroshi Tamiya has officially entered the race for governor, and in a shocking turn of events, Governor Kazunari Sayatari has declared he will withdraw his candidacy immediately. Shingo Seek realizes that Kurokochi Keita orchestrated the entire collapse of Sayatari's power by using Goda as a pawn. Kurokochi Keita's grin is wider than ever as he watches the fallout. He explains that while they couldn't touch an acting governor, a normal citizen is a much easier target for the cuffs. He has stripped Sayatari of his political immunity, leaving him vulnerable to the justice that Seek so desperately seeks. His plan worked perfectly. Later, Shingo Seek is called back to the commissioner's office to report on the chaos. Commissioner Dojima looks over the documents with a grim, calculating expression, noting that what was supposed to be a basic homicide and internal investigation has turned into the case of the century. The weight of the discovery hangs heavy in the air. The official story is already being spun to protect the department. An anonymous source has leaked that Goda killed his mistress, Rina, in a fit of jealous rage after learning she had a boyfriend. On the office wall, a campaign poster of the now-fallen Governor Sayatari promising zero crime, zero corruption, stands as a bitter, ironic reminder of the system's hypocrisy. But Commissioner Dojima has one last piece of information that chills Shingo Seek to the bone. He shows the young officer a witness statement concerning the victim's secret boyfriend, and it seems very likely that the man was none other than Kurokochi Keita. Shingo stares at the photo, his world tilting once again as he realizes his partner's connection to the murder. Driven by a new level of suspicion and disgust, Shingo Seek tracks down Kurokochi Keita at the site where he was burying the hitmen's bodies. He confronts the inspector as he steps out of his truck, his eyes burning with a mix of betrayal and pure, unadulterated hatred. He's no longer just an observer. He's a witness to a monster's work. Shingo Seek's voice trembles with terrifying rage as he lays out the ultimate manipulation. Kurokochi didn't just find Rina. He stole her, baiting Goda into a murderous frenzy just to secure the leverage needed to topple a governor. "There are limits to what I can tolerate," he screams, realizing that an innocent woman's life was merely a pawn in a much bigger, more lucrative game. Kurokochi Keita doesn't flinch. He looks back with a cold, singular focus, admitting that the pursuit of leverage justifies any cost. He doesn't deny the cruelty, only its necessity, muttering a chilling, "You don't get it," as his eyes drift toward the literal spoils of his corruption that define his life. Kurokochi Keita's lifestyle is a masterclass in the spoils of corruption. He has everything a man could dream of: luxury watches, a high-end mansion, and a red Ferrari that screams of a salary far beyond his official police pay. To him, these aren't just objects. They are the physical rewards of a singular, dirty method of policing. But even for a man like Kurokochi Keita, there comes a point of no return. He tells Shingo Seek that he was actually on the verge of resigning, ready to walk away from the force forever. Shingo, however, can't help but interject, suggesting that a confession and a prison sentence would have been far more appropriate for his crimes. The inspector ignores the jab, his eyes looking far away as he reflects on his career. He explains that as he was writing his resignation, he realized he had accumulated a mountain of secrets and clues to unsolved cases that would disappear with him. For once in his life, he decided he could use those dark secrets to do something that might actually be called good. Shingo looks on, both stunned and skeptical of his partner's sudden moral awakening. "So, Mr. Idealism?" Kurokochi asks. Kurokochi Keita leans in close, his face just inches from Shingo Seek's, his gap-toothed grin more menacing than ever. The air is thick with tension as he delivers his ultimatum. He gives the young superintendent a choice: report him now and return to his clean, powerless world, or stay and work with him to bring down the monsters the law can't touch. With a sudden shift in tone, Kurokochi Keita breaks the tension with a casual offer. He tells Shingo Seek to have a drink before making his final decision, though he admits with a smirk that he still only has Coke. As they walk together through the garden, the boundary between hunter and prey has never been thinner. Shingo remains silent, the weight of the choice pressing down on him. The scene shifts to a different part of the city, where the rhythmic pounding of loud music has the neighbors in an apartment complex at their wits' end. Two uniformed officers respond to the complaint, the heavy bass shaking the very walls of the hallway as they approach the source of the disturbance. No one can hear a thing over the blaring sound. They trace the noise to a specific unit and pound on the door, their patience already wearing thin. One officer, looking like a stalker in his focused irritation, shouts that they can't hear a thing. "Can't even hear the doorbell," he yells, while his partner prepares to do things the hard way. They have no idea who's behind that door. Suddenly, a package wrapped in newspaper falls to the ground with a heavy thud. It's a mysterious delivery that adds a strange and ominous note to the scene, as if the apartment's occupant was expecting something far more valuable than a visit from the police. PLF. It sounds as it hits the floor. The package makes its way into the hands of Kurokochi Keita, who opens it with a sinister glee. He looks down at the contents, his face lighting up as he confirms that everything is exactly as he planned. His leverage over Hitakayama is now complete, and he couldn't be happier about it. "Yep, that is exact," he mutters. Kurokochi Keita laughs at the politician's pathetic threats, completely unbothered by the rage he has provoked. He mockingly laments that the statute of limitations is already over for some of the man's past crimes, but they both know that public exposure is a different kind of death sentence. He thanks him for the nice talks as he prepares to leave with his prize. The news is full of the fallout from Kurokochi's master plan. The headlines scream about ex-Governor Saitari being arrested for a rape and murder from 15 years ago, while the new Governor Tamiya is hailed as a saint in comparison. But the newspaper also mentions the missing inspectors, Shima and Goto, and the mysterious suicide of Bungo Goda, leaving the public to wonder what dark forces are really at work. Was he in on it? The caption asks below Goda's photo. Meanwhile, back at the noisy apartment, the officers finally get the door open. They are greeted by a man who looks more like a skeleton than a person, wearing nothing but the police t-shirt and underwear. He stares at them with a blank, hollow gaze that sends a shiver down their spines. "Your name, please?" the officer asks, his pen poised over his notepad. The man identifies himself as Hori with a disturbing nonchalance. When asked why the volume was so high, he claims he was just trying to meditate, a bizarre excuse that the officers find impossible to take seriously. His face is pale and hawk-hack, his eyes wide and unblinking as he mocks the officers' concern for the neighbors. "Are you serious?" they ask. One officer notices the man's choice of music, a rare Japanese remix of a song by Sting, from the band The Police. Hori salutes them with a mockingly wide grin, claiming to be a huge fan of the force. Of course, he salutes, but his eyes remain cold and predatory, his salute feeling like an insult rather than a gesture of respect. The officers grow suspicious of the man's gear, specifically his police cap, suspecting he might have bought it from a corrupt officer. Hori tries to play it off as a fake, but as the officer reaches out to check, the tension in the room reaches a breaking point. "I'm just a police fan," he screams, cowering in a way that looks entirely staged. "Will you obey?" the officer demands. "I'm calling reinforcements," Hori suddenly shouts, pulling out his phone. The officers are confused, their radios buzzing with a series of toot-toot-tuts as Hori connects with someone. Meanwhile, in a much more official setting, Toshihiro Hashimoto is already on the phone, looking stressed as he talks to an unknown contact. The two worlds are about to collide. The call from Hori goes straight to Kurokochi Keita. The inspector's voice is cold as he identifies himself as being from the 2nd Division. He demands to speak to the officer on the other end, his tone suggesting that he has zero patience for anyone interfering with his business. "Hello? Who is this?" the officer asks, unaware of the predator he's just contacted. Kurokochi Keita doesn't mince words, his expression one of pure, professional coldness. He tells the officer that Hori is his informant and demands his immediate release. "Let him go, or I'll have your head," he growls, using his authority like a bludgeon. The officer is stunned into silence by the threat. He stammers, realizing he's just crossed a very dangerous line. The scene moves to Aobadai Police HQ, specifically interrogation room. Inside, Toshihiro Hashimoto sits across from a detective, the weight of the investigation finally taking its toll on the veteran politician. In a nearby office, another official drinks deeply from his cup, his face a mask of stern, silent worry as he looks at the fallout. The detective is relentless in his pursuit of the truth. He confronts Hashimoto with the evidence of Sawatari's past, the rape and murder of a minor 15 years ago. Hashimoto can only stare, his face a mask of sweating, silent terror as the photo of the crime scene is placed before him. The memory of the atrocity seems to hang in the air between them. Shingo Seek watches the interrogation from behind the one-way glass, his hand on his chin in deep thought. He's joined by another officer, but his focus remains entirely on Hashimoto, waiting for the man to finally break. He suspects that the politician knows far more than he's letting on, and the pressure is only going to increase. The detective continues to push, asking Hashimoto why he won't just tell the truth and end the nightmare. He reminds the politician that he is suspected of destroying evidence and being an accomplice to murder. Outside, Shingo and his colleague discuss the situation, noting that Hashimoto is a seasoned politician who won't break easily. "It's only a matter of time," the detective says, but time is a luxury they might not have. "If I talk, I'm a dead man," Hashimoto finally whispers, his eyes darting toward the detective in a moment of pure, unadulterated fear. When asked who he is afraid of, his answer is immediate and chilling. Kazunari Sayatari. The detective looks at him with a predatory smirk, knowing he's finally found the man's breaking point. "Oh," he asks, pushing for the name he already knows. Hashimoto is visibly shaking, his mind haunted by the image of Bungo Goda hanging from the ceiling. He's convinced that Sayatari is a monster who will ensure he suffers the same fate if he breaks his silence. Shingo Seek watches the man's breakdown from the shadows, realizing that the fear of Sayatari is a far more powerful deterrent than any threat of prison. That man is a monster. Hashimoto screams, his eyes wide with a primal madness that makes the official ruling of Goda's suicide feel like a hollow lie. This wall of terror is the first major hurdle in a case that is far from over. The scene shifts to City Hall, where the newly appointed Governor Tamiya is meeting privately with Commissioner Dojima. Although the public believes a new era has begun, the air in the room is thick with the unresolved shadows of the previous administration. Tamiya stares out the window at the city he now leads, his expression solemn as he prepares to address the dark legacy left behind by his predecessor. "You wanted to tell me something?" Dojima asks, his voice low and heavy, signaling a conversation about the difficult road ahead for the Sayatari investigation. Inside the quiet, wood-paneled office at City Hall, Governor Tamiya asks the question that's on everyone's mind. He wants to know how the investigation into his predecessor, Sayatari, is progressing. Commissioner Dojima admits that things are moving slowly, as the fallen politician hasn't said a single word since his arrest. The conversation shifts to the men who actually cracked the case. Tamiya is curious about the duo on the front lines. Dojima describes Shingo Seek as a man of unmatched integrity, but when asked about his partner, Kurokochi Keita, the commissioner's expression turns guarded. He knows that Seek is the only clean element in this equation. Meanwhile, in the interrogation room, the pressure on Hashimoto has reached a boiling point. He insists that Bungo Goda, MP's letter is the only thing incriminating him, but he also hints at something much darker: the suspicious circumstances surrounding Goda's supposed suicide. Shingo Seek listens with a grim intensity, his mind racing as he realizes the official story might be a complete fabrication. "You didn't know?" Hashimoto asks, sensing the detective's doubt. Back in the safety of the office, Dojima reveals a disturbing new development to Governor Tamiya. He has received an anonymous letter accusing Kurokochi Keita of being a corrupt officer who abused his powers for personal gain. The most shocking part? The letter claims Goda's death was actually a murder at the hands of Kurokochi himself. The truth is, Dojima begins, his voice low and heavy. Tamiya is stunned, his brow furrowed behind his glasses. He asks if it's possible that a police inspector could be a cold-blooded killer. Dojima admits that it's a distinct possibility and tells the governor that he's counting on the new investigation to find the true culprit behind Goda's death. Meanwhile, the two uniformed officers from earlier leave the apartment building, their faces pale with shock. "Looked like he was wearing a wig," one mutters, still unsettled by Hori's bizarre appearance. The officers discuss the man they just encountered and the terrifying shadow cast by his boss. One officer warns the other to stay away, describing Kurokochi Keita as a monster who has made his nest in the 2nd Division. They realize that in this precinct, you either work for Kurokochi or you stay out of his way. "Is he messing with us?" the younger officer asks, but the answer is already clear. The reputation of Kurokochi Keita is well-earned and far-reaching. He is a master of the dark arts of leverage, a man who meticulously collects the secrets of politicians, businessmen, high-ranking officers, and even the Yakuza. He stands in the shadows of the city's power, using their hidden shames to ensure that, in the end, everything always goes his way. No secret is safe from him. Suddenly, a deafening blast of music from the apartment sends the officers reeling. The sudden sonic assault is so powerful it feels like a physical blow, leaving them clutching their ears in agony. Inside, the occupant is lost in the sound, the loud rhythm masking a much more sinister preparation. "God, my ears!" the officer screams, while a toy-like mask on the wall seems to mock their pain. Inside the apartment, a different kind of preparation is underway. The skinny hitman, the same one who left no trace at the Toyama murder, is meticulously shaving every inch of his body. He's listening to Sting's The Police, the rhythmic music masking the critch-critch of the five-blade razor as he erases any chance of leaving DNA behind. He mocks the not very smart cops, knowing he could have done a far better job of staying hidden. The hitman is a machine of singular, terrifying focus. As he sits in the shower, the water washing away his hair and his humanity, he continues his grim ritual. He knows that with his methods, he is a ghost in the system, a predator that the law will never be able to catch or identify. The music blares on, a dark anthem for a man with no identity and no mercy. Across town, Toshiharu Hashimoto is being dropped off at his luxury home. His driver bows and promises to see him the next morning at 8, leaving the politician alone in the quiet suburban night. Hashimoto rings his doorbell, his brow furrowed as he waits for a response from his family. Is no one home? He wonders, his voice echoing in the empty entryway. He enters his darkened living room and is met with a sight pulled straight from his deepest nightmares. His wife and daughter are hanging from the crystal chandelier, their lifeless bodies silhouetted against the dim light. Hashimoto's scream of "What?" is cut short as the horror of the governor's family suicide method becomes a devastating reality in his own home. He stands frozen, the shoes of his loved ones dangling just above the floor. "Hi there," a voice chirps from the shadows, chillingly upbeat. The skinny hitman is sitting on the sofa, calmly holding a length of rope. Hashimoto is paralyzed, his eyes wide with a primal terror as he asks if Sayatari sent him. The hitman just tells him to relax, promise that it will only take a second. "Bingo!" he exclaims as he prepares to finish the job. "Who the hell are you?" Hashimoto stammers, but the answer is already standing before him. The hitman is a professional machine of death. He hoists the struggling Hashimoto onto his back, the man's desperate cries of "let me go," muffled by the crushing pressure on his throat. With a cold, shark-like smirk, the hitman tells his victim that for the sake of the story, this will be ruled another tragic family suicide. "Sorry," he whispers as Hashimoto's life is squeezed out of him in a fit of FUT and CRRR sounds. Later, at a luxury hotel, Shingo Seek looks Kurokochi Keita directly in the eye and asks the ultimate question. Did he have anything to do with Gota's death? Kurokochi's response is a masterclass in mockery. He puts on a wide, gap-toothed grin and claims he's innocent as a lamb, his eyes glinting with a secret amusement. Shingo isn't convinced, but he has no proof to counter the inspector's claim. But then, the inspector's tone shifts to something far more serious. He leans in close to his partner and mentions the rumors of a hitman on the loose, a shadow worker for the precinct's VIPs who has been causing pretty convenient deaths whenever a scandal occurs over the last 2 years. He wonders aloud if Gota was just another one of his targets, leaving Shingo to wonder if Kurokochi is trying to warn him or lead him into a trap. Kurokochi Keita's eyes are fixed on Shingo Seek, a daring challenge in his gaze. He asks the young superintendent the one question that could change the course of his life. Want to catch him? The offer hangs in the air, a tempting path into the darkest corners of the city's corruption. Shingo Seek is caught between his suspicion of his partner and his desperate need for justice. Meanwhile, the skinny hitman is already back in the field, disguised in a crisp police uniform as he lurks in the shadows near a gated estate. He adjusts his cap, his face a mask of predatory focus as he prepares for his next assignment. A car pulls up, and a mysterious figure watches from the darkness. Exclamation point. Seek's intuition flares, but he's already a target. A hand reaches out from a car window, passing the hitman a slip of paper. "Take care of this man," a voice commands. The hitman's eyes widen with a dark, manic excitement as he takes the contract. "Is that a contract?" he asks, his voice barely a whisper. He recognizes the target immediately. You, he mutters, as he looks at the photo of the man he's been ordered to kill. The hitman looks at the photo in his hand with a cold, singular intent. It's a picture of Shingo Sik, taken while he was walking in the city. The order is clear and final. Make sure it looks like an accident. The idealistic young superintendent has no idea that the very monsters he's trying to bring to justice have just put a price on his head, and the ghost of the precinct is already on his trail. A grisly scene greets the investigators. High above a chandelier, a man hangs lifeless, his tongue protruding in a final, silent scream. To the forensic team, it looks like a clear-cut suicide, but in this world, nothing is ever that simple. The arrival of Commissioner Dojima, an imposing figure in his crisp uniform and stern glasses, shifts the atmosphere instantly. He doesn't buy the suicide theory for a second. To him, this has all the markings of a calculated murder, and he's heard whispers of a police officer seen lurking nearby the night before. Commissioner Dojima leans in, his suspicion landing on a familiar face. He suggests the culprit might be an insider, someone like the notorious Kurokochi Keita. The mention of that name alone sends a ripple of unease through the room. Meanwhile, Kurokochi Keita and his young partner Sik Shingo are walking the city streets, digging into a pattern of accidents that stretches back 2 years. Kurokochi knows the truth. These aren't just coincidences, they are the work of a phantom. Kurokochi lists the victims: a corrupt MP found dead in his bathtub, a drug-trafficking businessman whose house burned down, and a journalist whose entire family was found hanging. All of them obstacles, and all of them dealt with in ways that left the police baffled. Sik Shingo's phone rings with news of another death. This time, it's Hashimoto. As Sik reels from the shock, Kurokochi calmly describes the killer: a ghost who shaves his entire body to ensure not a single hair or skin cell is left behind at the scene. Unbeknownst to them, they're being watched. From the shadows, a man with a wild look in his eyes snaps photos of Sik. To him, this isn't just a job, it's a performance. He's found his next target, and he's eager to show off his talent. Late that night, a knock at Sik Shingo's door reveals a man in a police uniform. He claims to have a few questions, and the unsuspecting Sik, ever the dutiful officer, invites him in without a second thought. The visitor enters politely, bowing as he takes off his shoes. But there's something off about his movements, and a sudden chill runs down Sik's spine as he watches the officer stoop low. Suddenly, the visitor begins to strip, tearing off his uniform with manic speed. Sik Shingo screams, threatening to call the cops, but the intruder just grins, his eyes wide and vacant. "I'm the police," he declares. Standing before Sik is a nightmare made flesh, completely naked, hairless, and terrifyingly thin. This is the hitman Kurokochi warned him about. Sik raises his fists, relying on his martial arts training, but the killer just laughs. The fight is one-sided. The hitman moves with a fluid, unnatural grace, slipping past Sik's defenses like a shadow. He strikes with precision, his movements designed to kill, not just to incapacitate. Sik is driven back, his training no match for the hitman's raw, predatory speed. Each blow from the killer is like a whip, and Sik can feel his consciousness slipping as the attacker closes in for the finish. The hitman pins Sik against the wall, his fingers digging into Sik's throat. He taunts him, mocking the weak police force, and reveals his grisly plan to drown Sik in his own bathroom to make it look like just another unfortunate suicide. Just as Sik's vision starts to fade, the door swings open. Kurokochi Keita stands there, his signature trench coat draped over his shoulders and a mocking smile on his face. "Surprise!" he chirps, catching the killer completely off guard. The hitman's shock turns into pure, unadulterated rage. He realizes he's walked into a trap. Kurokochi doesn't flinch, his eyes narrowing as he informs the killer that his fun is officially over. He's coming for him. The hitman lunges with a guttural roar, his hands clawing for Kurokochi's throat. Kurokochi grunts as he's caught in the killer's lethal grip, the air being squeezed out of him by the sheer ferocity of the attack. It's a brutal, chaotic struggle. The hitman uses every dirty trick in the book, his fingers seeking out pressure points and vital nerves. But Kurokochi isn't a conventional cop. He knows exactly how to fight a monster. With a surge of violent force, Kurokochi breaks the hold and delivers a series of devastating blows. He strikes with a cold efficiency, breaking the hitman's momentum and driving him into the ground with a sickening thud. Silence finally falls over the apartment. The hitman lies crumpled on the floor, defeated at last. Kurokochi stands over him, his breath heavy as the weight of what just happened begins to sink in. Seek can only watch in stunned disbelief. Shortly after, Commissioner Dojima arrives with his personal guards. He looks down at the captured hitman, his face a mask of cold professionalism, and asks Seek if this is the man who assaulted him. Seek confirms, unaware of the deep connection between his boss and the killer. Suddenly, the situation explodes. The hitman, despite his injuries, lunges for an officer's sidearm. Panicked shouts fill the hallway as he manages to grab the gun, his eyes wide with a frantic, desperate energy. The hitman raises the gun, but before he can pull the trigger, he freezes. His eyes meet Commissioner Dojima's, and for a fleeting second, there's a flicker of recognition and perhaps regret between them. But it's too late for mercy. Commissioner Dojima fires without a moment's hesitation. The gunshot shatters the tension, ending the hitman's life in an instant. To the bystanders, it's a heroic split-second rescue. But in truth, it's a cold-blooded move to ensure the dead tell no tales. In the cold silence that follows, the investigation begins, yet the assailant's identity remains a total enigma. As Seek Shingo stares at the body, he's left with more questions than answers, unaware that this official dead end is the first step in a much larger cover-up. Seek Shingo listens intently as the investigation into the hitman hits a dead end. Despite searching his residence and distributing his picture, there's no digital footprint and no clues to his identity. Commissioner Dojima looks on, his expression unreadable behind his glasses. Commissioner Dojima leans forward, revealing their only lead. He suggests that the hitman might have been hired by someone they already know, Inspector Kurokochi Keita. Seek is visibly shaken, his eyes widening as the commissioner plants the seeds of suspicion. The manipulation deepens as Dojima suggests that the corrupt ex-governor Sayatari paid Kurokochi to eliminate anyone who could testify against them. Once Goda and Hashimoto were gone, he whispers, all that was left was to get rid of you to erase the traces. Seek can barely believe the man he's been working with is a cold-blooded assassin. Fueled by a righteous fury, Seek Shingo vows to arrest Kurokochi Keita immediately. He storms out of the office, the police headquarters looming behind him in the night, a silent witness to the twisted game being played within its walls. Seek tracks Kurokochi Keita down to a lavish apartment, finding him casually lounging in a robe with a glass of whiskey. Are you the one who commissioned my assassination? Seek demands, his voice trembling with a mix of anger and betrayal. Kurokochi just stares back with his usual unbothered expression. Kurokochi Keita doesn't deny knowing the hitman, but he claims he only used him as an informant. Seek is incredulous. How could Kurokochi keep such a monster close? I needed more information, Kurokochi explains coldly, his eyes narrowed as he gauges Seek's reaction. Kurokochi begins to peel back the layers of the mystery, questioning how a killer with no identity could get his hands on a real police uniform. He notes that the first murders in the region go back 2 years, but the killer's roots run much deeper than that. The truth is far more disturbing than Seek could have imagined. Kurokochi reveals that the hitman was moving between regions under the protection of the national headquarters. Because he was his son. Kurokochi shouts, the revelation striking Seek like a physical blow. Who could be so powerful, yet so depraved? Does the name Dojima ring any bells? Kurokochi asks, his voice low and dangerous. Seek Shingo gasps, his face pale in the moonlight. The man who ordered his protection and framed Kurokochi is the same man whose son is a serial killer for the state. Under the cover of night, Kurokochi and Seek confront Commissioner Dojima on a quiet bridge. The city lights twinkle in the distance as the truth finally comes to light. "We have discovered the killer's identity, Mr. Dojima," Kurokochi says with a sharp grin. "He was your son." Dojima's mask of authority finally begins to crack. He admits he hadn't heard from his son in 18 years, but the day Goda died, he received a call. The problem child had returned, not as a son seeking reconciliation, but as a weapon seeking an accomplice. In a chilling flashback, we see the hitman calling his father, mocking Dojima's lack of interest in his work. Dojima was cornered by an anonymous letter that not only accused Kurokochi, but also proved that Goda's death was no suicide. He felt he had no choice but to use his son to eliminate the witnesses. Kurokochi Keida's new Koi Namhim, wicked grin, widens as he lays out the commissioner's true plan. "So you're counting on the fact I'd help Shingo just so you could legitimately kill your kid in the police station?" he sneers. Dojima had planned to kill two birds with one stone. Eliminate his son and blame Kurokochi for hiring him. Seek is disgusted, unable to fathom how a father could be so cold. "And you didn't find any better way to protect yourself than to kill him?" he asks, his voice full of contempt. Dojima looks down, the weight of his sins finally becoming too heavy to bear. Kurokochi points a gloved finger at the broken man. "You got too greedy, Mr. Dojima," he declares. Kurokochi reveals the final irony. He was the one who wrote the anonymous letter that started this entire chain of events, just to see how much trouble it would cause. "Understand, I can't ignore such a crime," Dojima whispers, a hollow look in his eyes. He realizes his career and his life are over. Before Seek can move to arrest him, Dojima vaults over the bridge's railing and plunges into the darkness. Seek screams in horror as he watches his superior fall to his death. Kurokochi Keita just watches with a cynical sigh. "What a waste," he mutters. "You could have blackmailed him and be set for life." Seek is aghast at Kurokochi's coldness, realizing that even in death, Kurokochi only sees lost opportunities for leverage. "You knew he was going to jump, didn't you?" Seek asks, but he already knows the answer. "Don't think about it too much, kid," Kurokochi says, patting Seek on the shoulder as they walk away from the scene of the suicide. The city skyline is vast and uncaring, much like the game they are caught in. For Seek, the world has just become a much darker place. Sometime later, a full-scale police siege is underway at a remote villa. The SWAT team is in position, sirens wailing in the woods. Seek Shingo is at the center of it, his face set in a grim expression as the police prepare to assault the building where Kurokochi is hiding. The commander orders the assault, giving the command to shoot to kill if the suspect is armed. But Seek isn't ready to let it end like this. "Wait a bit," he pleads, stepping forward. "I'll try to go reason with him." He can't believe Kurokochi would just give up or go down fighting. Ignoring the warnings that it's too dangerous, Seek takes the megaphone. "Kurokochi, it's me. I'm coming to you. Don't open fire," he shouts, his voice echoing across the lawn. He knows that if he doesn't intervene, the police will turn the villa into a bloodbath. The other officers watch in awe at Seek's bravery. He slowly approaches the front door, his hands raised. The door creaks open, and there stands Kurokochi Keita, a revolver in his hand, and that same frustratingly calm expression on his face. "Move it," he barks, ushering Seek inside. Inside Soatari's lavish villa, Kurokochi is completely at ease. He mocks the garbage taste to the ex-governor and casually mentions that Soatari gave him the keys for a holiday. Seek is baffled. Kurokochi has barricaded himself in a luxury mansion instead of running for his life. "Why am I not convinced?" Seek mutters. Kurokochi reveals he's down to his last card. Knowing Soatari was always one step ahead, he retreated to this vacation villa, hoping for one final piece of leverage to save his skin, standing amidst tiger skin rugs and cold antiques like a cornered beast. But the search came up empty. When Seek asks for his findings, Kurokochi gives a hollow reply. Nothing. Seek desperately urges him to surrender his weapon, promising to testify that the recent killings were in self-defense. But Kurokochi's unreadable gaze suggests he knows they are both reaching a point of no return. In the present, Kurokochi Keita delivers a grim ultimatum to Shingo Seek. If they continue this path, they'll both end up as accomplices behind bars. Then, the scene shifts to 30 days earlier. A newspaper headline blares the news of police dropping charges against the corrupt ex-governor, Saitari Kazunari, while witnesses continue to vanish without a trace. The nightmare was only just beginning. Flashback to a month ago. Shingo Seek is in a state of desperation, pacing the room as he insists they can't let Saitari get away with his crimes. Kurokochi Keita, however, is the picture of calm, sipping whiskey and listening to his partner's idealistic pleas with a detached smirk. Kurokochi lays out the cold reality of Sawatari's reach. He reminds Seek of the victims who have already been silenced, Goda, Hashimoto, and even the young girl whose body was found discarded in the grass. With the witnesses gone, the crimes Saitari committed years ago are being erased from the public record. Seek is left wondering how many more have died to protect the ex-governor's secrets. The conversation takes a dark turn as Kurokochi casually admits to killing the two missing inspectors, Goto and Shima. Seek is horrified, but Kurokochi just brushes it off, saying dead men tell no tales. When Seek asks what he's going to do now that Saitari is free and likely coming for them, Kurokochi gives a baffling response. Apologize, of course. He then demonstrates a dramatic, groveling bow, much to Seek's shock and confusion. The flashback continues to a private meeting between Kurokochi Keita and Saitari Kazunari. Saitari is lounging in a silk robe, sucking on a large swirl lollipop with an unsettling, childlike fixation. He admits that underestimating Kurokochi was his greatest mistake, but his tone is far from apologetic. He holds court on his sofa, flanked by stone-faced guards. Saitari shows Kurokochi a book detailing the most cruel torture methods of ancient China, his eyes gleaming with a sadistic delight. He confesses that while he was in custody, he spent his time fantasizing about ways to break Kurokochi. He describes the sophisticated techniques used to prolong a victim's suffering, making it clear that he views torture as a refined art form. Saitari leans in, his face contorted with a dark joy as he describes the final stages of torture, when the victims no longer even look human and are left begging for the sweet release of death. He enjoys his lollipop, his casual demeanor contrasting sharply with the horrific imagery he's describing. He's testing Kurokochi, seeing if the thieving inspector has the stomach for true cruelty. Kurokochi doesn't flinch. Instead, he drops to his knees in a mock display of desperation, begging for mercy for his poor, innocent soul. It's a performance, and Saitari knows it. Kurokochi is playing the part of the cornered rat, but his mind is already working on a way to turn the tables. Kurokochi offers a deal. He'll frame someone else for Saitari's crimes, allowing the ex-governor to be seen as an innocent victim of a false accusation. Saitari is intrigued, his interest piqued by Kurokochi's lack of morals. "What do I get from keeping you alive?" he asks, to which Kurokochi replies by naming the two inspectors Saitari sent to kill him, Goto and Shima. Kurokochi's plan is meticulous and devious. He explains how he'll break into Goto and Shima's homes to plant false evidence, including incriminating photos and a school uniform. He boasts about his secret connections in the forensics department, suggesting that the evidence will be indisputable once it's found by the police. Saitari listens, his sharp grin mirroring Kurokochi's own. The trap is set. Kurokochi suggests planting the blood of a young witness girl onto the school uniform to seal the inspector's fate. He's offering Saitari a way to erase his past by pinning it on the very men he used to do his dirty work. It's a level of betrayal that even Saitari seems to appreciate. Saitari wants guarantees before he agrees to the deal. He demands to know exactly where Kurokochi buried Goto and Shima, just in case he needs the information later. He watches Kurokochi carefully, his lollipop ever present, as he pushes for the final piece of leverage he needs to maintain control. The narrator's voice turns cold, and like an amateur, Kurokochi told him what he wanted to know. Sawatori's eyes are half closed in satisfaction as he processes the information. He's won this round, or so he thinks, by letting Kurokochi believe he's safe as long as he's useful. Back to the night of the confession. Shingo Seek is reeling, his hands on his head as he tries to process the fact that Kurokochi actually broke into the homes of two missing officers to frame them. Kurokochi just laughs, telling Seek how easy it was because both men were single. He seems to take a sick pride in the simplicity of his criminal genius. Kurokochi then tries to hand Seek the pistol he used to kill the two inspectors, suggesting Seek keep it for safekeeping. Seek is horrified, flatly refusing to touch the murder weapon. Kurokochi just shrugs and reveals he's also carrying an unregistered gun he took from Shima's house. Seek can't understand why Kurokochi would keep such incriminating evidence. Kurokochi explains his logic. If he threw the gun in a river, forensics would eventually find it and link it back to him. By keeping it, he maintains control over the evidence. Seek is disgusted, firmly stating that he refuses to break the law any further to protect Kurokochi's secrets. The tension between the two partners is at a breaking point. The timeline shifts to 10 days earlier at the police general headquarters. The narrator notes that keeping the murder weapon was a fatal mistake that is about to come back and haunt Kurokochi. Shingo Seek is summoned to the commissioner's office, unaware of the storm that is about to break. Seek enters the office to find Commissioner Dojima waiting for him, accompanied by a stern-looking official. The atmosphere is thick with tension as Seek offers a formal greeting, his instincts telling him that something is very wrong. The news is devastating. Dojima informs Seek that the corpses of the two missing inspectors, Goto and Shima, were found buried on Mount 2. Seek's heart sinks as he realizes the burial site Kurokochi mentioned has been discovered. The trap he's been caught in is starting to close. Dojima explains that they received an anonymous phone call from someone who witnessed the suspect burying the bodies. The witness's description of the man on the mountain matches their primary suspect perfectly. Seek tries to remain calm, but the ground is shifting beneath his feet. Who is that? Seek asks, his voice trembling slightly. The answer is the one he feared most, Inspector Kurokochi. The commissioner's gaze is unwavering as he delivers the final blow to Seek's loyalty. The hunt for Kurokochi is no longer a secret investigation. It's a high-priority manhunt. Enter Superintendent Shirishoji, the head of forensics. He's a man of cold, clinical precision, and he's been brought in from national headquarters to oversee the case. Shirishoji's presence signifies that the top brass is no longer willing to tolerate Kurokochi's antics. Seek is introduced to his new supervisor, a man who values the letter of the law above all else. Dojima makes it clear, Seek will be working directly under Shirishoji to investigate and bring down Kurokochi. The young detective is in an impossible position, ordered to take down the man who, for all his faults, is the only one truly fighting the corruption at the top. Very well, sir, Seek replies, hiding his turmoil behind a professional mask. Shirishoji, a man who built his career on the cold certainty of forensics, makes it clear that this investigation isn't just a formality. It's an execution of justice. He speaks with the weary authority of a man tired of Kurokochi's constant manipulation of the law. As Seek listens, he realizes that for the first time, his partner is facing an opponent who won't be swayed by mind games or blackmail. Shirishoji's gaze is unyielding as he vows to put Kurokochi exactly where he belongs, in a prison cell. Seek feels the walls closing in, caught in the middle of a war between the law he serves and the man he's been forced to protect. What the hell was I supposed to do? He thinks, realizing he's become a double agent in a game with no survivors. This collision course leads straight to the high-stakes standoff currently unfolding at Sawatori's villa. Trở lại hiện tại, tại cuộc bao vây biệt thự. Shingo đứng trước cửa, nài nỉ cộng sự của mình hãy đầu hàng trước khi cảnh sát nổ súng. Thế nhưng, Kurokochi Keita chỉ đáp lại bằng một nụ cười đầy thách thức, không bao giờ. Phía sau lưng Say, đội đặc nhiệm SVP đã dàn trận sẵn sàng, chỉ chờ một mệnh lệnh để xông vào. Kurokochi Keita nhẹ răng cười, ánh mắt rực lên sự điên rồ quen thuộc. Tôi sẽ chiến đấu đến cùng, anh ta tuyên bố. Có vẻ như vị thanh tra biến thái này không hề có ý định rút lui một cách êm đẹp, ngay cả khi họng súng của cả sở cảnh sát đang chĩa thẳng vào mình. Cảnh phim quay ngược về 15 năm trước. Shizoso lúc này vẫn còn là một nhân viên trẻ mẫn cán của bộ phận pháp y. Anh bước ra khỏi sở cảnh sát với chiếc vali đồ nghề trên tay, và bị chặn lại bởi tiếng gọi của một người quen cũ. Đó là khởi đầu cho một mối quan hệ đầy duyên nợ giữa khoa học và sự gian lận. Trong hồi tưởng, Kurokochi Keita trẻ tuổi thông báo mình vừa được chuyển sang đội 2. Shizoso tỏ vẻ khinh bỉ, cảnh báo rằng Kurokochi có thể ít gây hại hơn khi truy đuổi bọn lừa đảo thay vì những kẻ sát nhân. Anh ta không thể chịu nổi cách Kurokochi liên tục làm giả bằng chứng và biến lực lượng cảnh sát thành trò cười trong mắt giới chuyên môn. Kurokochi Keita chỉ cười lớn trước những lời buộc tội. Với anh, phá vỡ một vài quy tắc không thành vấn đề nếu nó giúp tóm được kẻ xấu. Tuy nhiên, Shizoso với vẻ mặt nghiêm nghị đã đưa ra một lời thề. Nếu một ngày Kurokochi thực sự trở nên tha hóa, chính anh sẽ là người tống anh ta vào tù. Đó là lời hứa định mệnh mà Shizoso đã mang theo suốt 15 năm qua. Trở lại hiện tại, sự căng thẳng tại biệt thự Swatari đã lên đến đỉnh điểm. Bên ngoài, cảnh sát và xe còi hú bao vây mọi lối thoát. Bên trong, Shingo xây nỗ lực thuyết phục Kurokochi Keita buông súng để không làm lớn chuyện thêm. Kurokochi đang loay hoay tìm chỗ giấu khẩu súng, mảnh bằng chứng cuối cùng có thể kết liễu sự nghiệp của mình. Say hét lên đầy giận dữ khi thấy Kurokochi vẫn cố chấp che giấu khẩu súng. Kurokochi bình thản giải thích rằng đây là bằng chứng thép chứng minh anh đã giết Goto và Shima, và nếu bị tìm thấy, anh sẽ không còn đường chối tội. Tuy nhiên, điều anh sợ nhất không phải là đi tù, mà là bị đổ tội cho những tội ác của Swatari mà anh không hề thực hiện. Say bất lực nhìn người cộng sự đang lún sâu vào vũng bùn do chính mình tạo ra. Bối cảnh chuyển sang dãy núi u ám. Kurokochi Keita biết rõ mình đang ở thế ngàn cân treo sợi tóc, lưng đã sát tường, và không còn đường lùi. Cuộc chơi mà anh ta từ dàn dựng giờ đây đang quay lại cắn ngược chính chủ. Tại hiện trường núi to, lực lượng cảnh sát và pháp y đang tích cực đào bới trong rừng sâu. Những ánh đèn pin quét qua màn đêm u tối, dẫn đến một phát hiện kinh hoàng. Sự mất tích của hai thanh tra không còn là một bí ẩn nữa khi những thi thể đầu tiên dần lộ diện dưới lớp đất lạnh. Superintendent Shidoso có mặt tại hiện trường để trực tiếp chỉ đạo. Các thi thể đã bị phân hủy đến mức không thể nhận dạng bằng mắt thường, nhưng những chiếc phù hiệu cảnh sát vẫn còn nguyên vẹn, khẳng định đó chính là Goto và Shima. Cả hai đều bị bắn chết, một phương thức hành động đầy bạo lực và dứt khoát. Shidoso lạnh lùng ra lệnh điều tra những cư dân xung quanh về bất kỳ ai khả nghi xuất hiện tại đây. Một nhân viên pháp y mang đến cho Shidoso một chiếc túi đựng bằng chứng. Shidoso nhấn mạnh rằng ưu tiên hàng đầu là tìm ra dấu vết của Kurokochi Keita. Anh ta nghi ngờ người cộng sự cũ của mình có liên quan trực tiếp đến vụ thảm sát này và không muốn bỏ sót bất kỳ chi tiết nhỏ nào. Shidoso xem xét mảnh bằng chứng kỳ lạ, một bộ đồng phục nữ sinh đầy vết máu. Đây chính là thứ Kurokochi đã bí mật trồng vào căn hộ của Goto và Shima trước đó. Tuy nhiên, với con mắt nhà nghề, Shidoso nhận thấy bộ đồ này trông không hề mới. Anh ra lệnh xét nghiệm DNA ngay lập tức, nghi ngờ rằng có một âm mưu thâm độc hơn ẩn giấu phía sau mảnh vải này. 3 ngày trước đó, tại văn phòng thống đốc, một cuộc họp khẩn cấp diễn ra trong bầu không khí căng thẳng tột độ. Kết quả pháp y gây chấn động. Bộ đồng phục tìm thấy ở nhà Goto thuộc về một nữ sinh trung học bị sát hại dã man từ 15 năm trước. Các quan chức bàng hoàng, tự hỏi liệu Swatari Kazuni có thực sự là nạn nhân của một vụ vu khống, hay chính ông ta là kẻ đứng sau mọi chuyện. Shingo sẽ cố gắng giữ bình tĩnh trước những luồng thông tin trái chiều. Các quan chức lo sợ về sự trả đũa của Swatari và sự chế giễu của truyền thông nếu vụ việc bị phanh phui. Shidoso khẳng định anh sẽ xử lý Kurokochi Keita để bịt đầu mối, trong khi Sei đề xuất nên chờ kết quả phân tích kỹ hơn trước khi công bố bất cứ điều gì. Mọi quân cờ đều đang được sắp đặt cho một cú lừa ngoạn mục. Thống đốc hoặc quan chức cấp cao đặt hết niềm tin vào Shidoso để giải quyết mớ hỗn độn này. Trong khi đó, Shingo Sei lặng lẽ quan sát, Ánh mắt hiện lên vẻ mệt mỏi và lo âu khi nhận ra mình đang bị kẹt giữa những thế lực chính trị tàn nhẫn. Shidoso và Sei đến thăm biệt thự của Swati Kaduni vào ban đêm. Vì cựu thống đốc vẫn giữ vẻ thong dong đầy biến thái, vừa mút kẹo mút vừa đồng ý chờ đợi vài ngày để cảnh sát làm trong sạch tên tuổi của ông ta khỏi những cáo buộc giả mạo. Swatadi đang tận hưởng ván cờ mà ông ta tin rằng mình đã thắng chắc. Swatadi bồi thêm một cú đấm thép khi khẳng định rằng Kurokochi Keita đã đến gặp ông ta để tống tiền. Shidoso cúi đầu cảm ơn sự hợp tác, trong khi hỏi thêm về mối quan hệ giữa Kurokochi và các vụ án mạng. Swatadi diễn vai một nạn nhân vô tội một cách hoàn hảo, từng bước dồn Kurokochi vào đường cùng. Swatadi tiếp tục vu khống rằng Kurokochi đã thừa nhận loại bỏ 2 viên cảnh sát vì lợi ích của ông ta. Thật đáng sợ, ông ta thốt lên đầy giả tạo. Shidoso lạnh lùng yêu cầu một bản tường trình nhân chứng chính thức, và Swatadi vui vẻ đồng ý, tự hào tuyên bố mình là một công dân tuân thủ pháp luật. Sei kinh hãi trước sự tráo trở của cả hai bên. Shidoso nở một nụ cười đắc thắng. Anh ta cuối cùng cũng đã nắm thóp được Kurokochi Keita ngay tại nơi mình muốn. Trong khi đó, Shingo Sei nhận ra Swatadi đã hoàn toàn phản bội Kurokochi và giăng một cái bẫy không lối thoát. Nhưng anh không thể nói ra bất cứ điều gì để cảnh báo cộng sự của mình. Mọi hy vọng cứu vãn tình thế dường như đã tan biến. Tại trụ sở cảnh sát, bầu không khí trở nên náo nhiệt khi một nhân viên thông báo đã tìm thấy nhân chứng nhìn thấy một người đàn ông giống Kurokochi lảng vảng gần nơi phát hiện thi thể. Đó là bằng chứng cuối cùng họ cần. Shidoso ra lệnh chuẩn bị bắt giữ, bỏ qua những lời can ngăn yếu ớt của Sei về việc thiếu bằng chứng thuyết phục. Vòng vây đang khép lại xung quanh Kurokochi Keita. Bất ngờ, một cuộc gọi từ Swati Kaduni khiến cả văn phòng chấn động. Ông ta báo cáo rằng Kurokochi Keita đã đột nhập trái phép vào ngôi nhà thứ 2 của mình. Shidoso rít lên đầy phấn khích, đây rồi. Họ giờ đây có thể còng tay Kurokochi ngay lập tức vì tội đột nhập trái phép. Một cái cớ hoàn hảo để bắt đầu cuộc thanh trừng chính thức. Trở lại thời điểm hiện tại biệt thự bị bao vây, lực lượng đặc nhiệm đã sẵn sàng xông vào mọi ngóc ngách. Sei và Kurokochi đang ở bên trong, đối diện với hồi kết của một ván bài chính trị đầy máu và nước mắt. Bên trong biệt thự, Sei hốt hoảng khi thấy Kurokochi vẫn thản nhiên giấu khẩu súng vào chiếc đồng hồ cổ. Anh nhắc nhở Kurokochi về những dấu vân tay sẽ tố cáo tội ác của anh ta, nhưng Kurokochi chỉ cười khẩy, gọi Swatadi là kẻ phản bội rẻ tiền. Kurokochi nhận ra mình đã bị gậy ông đập lưng ông và sự tức giận đang sục sôi dưới lớp vỏ bọc bình thản thường thấy. Anh ta không ngờ Swatadi lại dám lật kèo trắng trợn đến thế. Seek desperately tries to convince Kurokochi to surrender and claim self-defense, offering to vouch for him in court. For a fleeting moment, Kurokochi's hard exterior softens, and he looks at the young detective with something like genuine affection. "You're a good person, kid," he remarks, a final moment of peace before he steps out to face the music. The confrontation ends not with a bang, but with the cold click of handcuffs. Shingo Seek leads Kurokochi out into the glare of police lights, where Superintendent Shiroshoji stands waiting like a vengeful ghost. "I've kept my promise from 15 years ago," Shiroshoji announces, his voice thick with a decade and a half of anticipation. As he is led away, Kurokochi remains unreadable, leaving Seek trapped in the realization that he has officially become a double agent in a war for the soul of the police force. Kurokochi Keita is led away in handcuffs, but his usual smirk hasn't faded. As he passes Superintendent Shiroshoji, he delivers a mocking remark. "I see. You finally left your hole." Shiroshoji remains stone-faced, his eyes fixed on a man he has spent years waiting to catch. The police presence is heavy, and it seems like the legendary corrupt cop has finally met his match. Shingo Seek watches the arrest with a heavy heart, his idealism shattered. The narrator notes that this should be the end of the story, the most corrupt cop on the force finally put down. But as the scene shifts to the police headquarters and interrogation room, a lingering doubt remains. Is this truly the end, or just another one of Kurokochi's elaborate games? Inside the interrogation room, the tables have turned in a way no one expected. Commissioner Dojima sits across from Shiroshoji, his arms crossed, and his face red with fury. "What does this mean?" he bellows. He insists he is the victim, claiming that Kurokochi's break-in at his villa was the real crime. Shirishoji and his colleagues watch him with a cold, detached intensity. Dojima is incredulous, questioning why the police are persecuting this poor old man instead of the criminal they just arrested. He accuses Shirishoji of falling for Kurokochi's manipulation, but the forensic chief just remains silent. Behind the one-way glass, Shingo Sek and another officer watch in confusion, trying to make sense of the sudden shift in the investigation. "Watch and learn," Shirishoji's presence seems to say. Shirishoji drops the first bombshell. They found 2 firearms in Dojima's villa. Dojima scoffs, claiming he has never owned a gun and that Kurokochi must have planted them there. He laughs off the accusation as a cheap pretense, confident that there is no physical evidence linking him to any weapon. Shirishoji just stares back, his expression unchanging. The evidence is undeniable. Shirishoji reveals that the forensics team has certified one of the pistols was used to murder the 2 missing inspectors, Goto and Shima. Dojima's eyes bulge as the weight of the accusation hits him. He starts to realize that this isn't just about a break-in anymore. He's being accused of a double homicide of his own officers. Shirishoji notes that the ballistics analysis on the other weapon was even more surprising. The second weapon is the key to a cold case that has haunted the department for 15 years, the assassination of a web designer and his entire family. Dojima is speechless as images of the horrific crime scene fill his mind. He assumes the gun must belong to Kurokochi, his face contorting into a mask of frantic desperation. He begs Shirishoji to tell him whose fingerprints they found on the weapons. Superintendent Shirishoji leans in, his voice a cold, sharp blade. "Yours," he declares. The word hangs in the air like a death sentence. Dojima's world collapses in a split second. The realization that his own fingerprints have been found on the murder weapons of 2 different eras, leaving him utterly broken. Commissioner Dojima is frozen in a state of pure, unadulterated shock. His face is pale, his mouth agape, and his eyes wide with the realization that he has been completely outplayed. The man who thought he was the puppet master has found himself caught in a trap far more intricate than he ever imagined. Outside the interrogation room, Shingo Sek is screaming in disbelief. What? What the hell is going on?" he cries out, his mind reeling from the sudden reversal of fortune. Shirishoji, however, remains remarkably calm, his eyes fixed on the man who is now his most high-profile prisoner. The investigation has taken a turn that no one in the department could have predicted. Cut to some time later. Kurokochi Keita is casually sitting on a sofa in the police lobby, reading a newspaper as if he doesn't have a care in the world. He's a free man. Behind him, people walk by, unaware that the most corrupt cop has just delivered the most significant takedown in the department's history. The irony is as thick as the smoke from his eventual cigar. Shirishoji approaches Kurokochi, informing him that Sayatari has dropped all charges related to the break-in. Could it be because he was arrested for murder? Kurokochi asks with a knowing smirk. The 2 men stand face to face, the weight of their shared history and the recent events hanging between them. Kurokochi has achieved the impossible. He's walking free while his superior is behind bars. Kurokochi reveals the secret to his success. He didn't just find the guns. He manipulated the system itself. "All I had to do was swap his fingerprints with yours in the database," he tells Shirishoji. "It was child's play." He laughs, boasting about his technical prowess and his utter lack of ethics. Shirishoji just listens, noting that it was a simple coincidence that the gun found at Goto's was the one used in the 15-year-old cold case. Or was it? "I owe you one, old friend," Kurokochi adds. Shirishoji's response is simple, simply respecting our agreement. The scene flashes back to 15 years earlier. A young Shirishoji warns a young Kurokochi that one day he'll be in deep shit. He was right, but he also made a promise on that day, a promise that he has kept to the letter. The bond between these 2 men is built on a foundation of professional rivalry and a shared, dark understanding of how the world really works. Shiroshoji's promise was clear. I'll be the judge of whether you have become as corrupt as the people you cuff or if your transgression of the law was justified. He vowed to get Kurokochi out by any means at my disposal, if his reasons were valid. In this case, the takedown of a high-ranking official involved in a cold-blooded family assassination was more than enough justification for the forensic chief. The flashback ends with Kurokochi laughing hysterically, pointing a finger at his friend. "Ah, Shiroshoji, please never change," he cries. Back in the present, Kurokochi Kato walks out of the police headquarters, a free man once again. He strolls through the busy lobby, his hands in his pockets, and his head held high. Behind him, Shiroshoji watches him go, the silent protector of a man who breaks the law to enforce a different kind of justice. The chapter ends with Kurokochi ang dung byukare koi, soaking sat, leaving behind a trail of chaos and a department that will never be the same. Another night in the city, another soul plummeting into the abyss. A scream, a thud, and then silence. Just another unfortunate accident in a world that doesn't care. While a body lies cold on the pavement, the face of the man responsible beams from a campaign poster. Meet Densuke Jichi, a politician with a smile as fake as the promises he makes. To the public, he's a leader. To those who know the truth, he's a monster. The morning news calls it a suicide, a parliamentary secretary driven to the edge by election stress. But the man in the photo, Asanuma's son, didn't kill himself. He was erased. In a quiet cafe, a father's heart is breaking. Mr. Asanuma sits staring into his coffee, the weight of a grief no parent should ever carry pressing down on his shoulders. He knows his son wouldn't just leave him like that. Desperate for the truth, Asanuma confronts a journalist. He knows his son called this man just hours before he died, planning to blow the whistle on Ajichi's dirty dealings. He's furious that the papers are printing nothing but lies. The scale of the corruption is staggering. Ajichi has been using shell companies to buy up land for dirt cheap, knowing exactly where the government plans to build massive new infrastructure projects. It's a game of printing money for himself, while everyone else pays the price. Asanuma reveals his son's final secret, a notebook, a record of every bribe, every deal, and every crime Ajichi ever committed. But without solid proof, the journalist's hands are tied. The system is rigged to protect men like Ajichi. When the law fails, a desperate man finds his own way. Asanuma quietly pulls a knife from his bag. If the police won't give him justice, he'll take it himself. He's done talking. Meanwhile, at the Federal Police Commissioner's office, Kurokochi Kato is having a very different kind of conversation. He's just been told he's being transferred. Most cops would be worried, but Kurokochi? He just finds the whole thing fascinating. The man behind the desk is Commissioner Kakizaki, and he's clearly reached his limit. He wants Kurokochi gone permanently. But Kurokochi didn't get this far by following orders. He got here by blackmailing every predecessor Kakizaki ever had. His laugh echoes through the room, mocking the very idea of authority. Kakizaki warns him that he's made a grave error, but Kurokochi isn't even flinching. He knows where the bodies are buried, and he's more than happy to start digging if it means keeping his position. It's a dangerous game of chicken between two men who both have blood on their hands. Kakizaki brings up the Saitari case, reminding Kurokochi of his past excesses. In this department, transfers are irrevocable, and if Kurokochi isn't happy, he can always resign. The commissioner is certain he's finally won. Kurokochi exits the office, his young partner Seek Shingo following close behind. Seek is always looking for a way to fix things, but even he's starting to realize that some things in this department are beyond repair. Kurokochi suspects the order came from much higher up than just Kakizaki. He wonders if he poked his nose into the wrong place this time. Seek is confused, but the look on Kurokochi's face says everything. He's already planning his next move. Kurokochi casually admits he took a bribe from Ajichi to look the other way on his secretary's death. Seek is disgusted, screaming about shame, but Kurokochi doesn't care about morals. He only cares about the leverage he can gain from the dirt he finds. Before they part ways, Kurokochi hands Seek a business card with his personal number. He tells the kid to give him a call if he ever gets in too deep. It's a warning masked as a favor, and Seek can feel the weight of it in his hand. The scene shifts to a bustling political rally. The air is thick with the scent of empty promises as the people gather to hear their local hero speak. The sign says it all. Densuke Ejichi is here to save the day. Ejichi stands on his soapbox, megaphone in hand, swearing to build roads and end insecurity. It's a classic political performance, loud, grand, and completely hollow. He's selling a dream to people whose reality he's actively destroying. The crowd cheers, and Ejichi descends to shake hands, playing the part of the man of the people to perfection. But hiding in the shadows of the crowd is Kurokochi, watching the performance with a cynical grin. He knows exactly what's about to happen. Kurokochi approaches the politician, mocking him about his transfer to a detention center. He asks Ejichi if he feels safe behind bars, or if he's starting to worry about which side of them he'll end up on. The tension between them is electric. Then, Kurokochi drops the hammer. He tells Ejichi that Asunuma's father is right there in the crowd, waiting for the chance to stab him. He mocks Ejichi's arrogance, reminding him that when you take everything from a man, he has nothing left to lose. Kurokochi offers to help by handling the old man, but Ejichi dismisses him, protected by his own guerrilla security detail. Kurokochi just laughs, swipes the politician's megaphone, and walks away. He's already set his own trap. Later that night, Kurokochi tracks down Asanuma in a dark alley. The old man is surprised, but Kurokochi isn't here to arrest him. He's here to give him exactly what he needs, an opportunity. Kurokochi leans in, handing Asanuma the megaphone like a torch of vengeance. He tips him off about Ejichi's book signing at the Kinsei Library tomorrow, noting that the security will be conveniently lax. He's not just giving the old man a tool. He's giving him a stage to air out the city's dirty laundry. The next day, a long line of supporters stretches outside the library, eager to meet the man who claims to have saved the economy. They're here for a signature, completely unaware that they've actually bought front row seats to the most explosive show in town. The pieces are all in place, and the main event is about to begin. At the Kinsei Library, the atmosphere is festive. Densuke Ejichi beams with a practiced politician smile, shaking hands and thanking his supporters for their votes. He's the star of the show, completely unaware that the stage is about to collapse beneath him. In the background, his security detail remains vigilant, their eyes scanning the crowd for any sign of trouble. Moving silently through the crowd is a figure that shouldn't belong there, a man in a wrestling mask. He weaves between the unsuspecting patrons, his presence a jarring contrast to the suit and tie event. One of Ejichi's guards spots him, his hand moving to his radio as he pursues the masked intruder toward the back of the building. The tension is rising, but the politician continues his performance, oblivious to the wolf in the fold. The masked man leads the pursuit into the men's restroom. Thinking he has a simple prankster cornered, the guard rushes in, only to find himself staring down the barrel of a baseball bat. The man in the mask isn't here for a joke. He's here for a reckoning. Outside, a second guard hears the commotion and hesitates at the door, his face a mask of uncertainty as the sound of a struggle echoes from within. Seconds later, the restroom is silent once more. Both guards lie unconscious on the cold tile floor. Their duty failed. The masked man stands over them for a moment, gripping his bat before preparing for the main event. He's cleared the path, and now there's nothing standing between him and the man he believes murdered his son. The predator is ready to step back into the light. Back at the signing table, Ejichi is still mid-sentence, promising change to another supporter, when a shadow falls over him. The masked man has returned, standing directly behind the politician. Ejichi feels the sudden shift in the room's energy, his smile faltering as he catches the horrified expression of someone in the line. He turns, his eyes widening as he realizes that the security he so heavily relies on is nowhere to be found. The mask comes off, revealing the desperate, grieving face of Mr. Asanuma. In one swift motion, he grabs the politician, pulling him into a chokehold and pressing a kitchen knife against his throat. The crowd erupts into chaos, people screaming and scrambling for the exits as the library transforms from a campaign stop into a hostage scene. Asanuma's eyes are wild, his breath coming in ragged gasps as he finally has his son's killer right where he wants him. Outside, the scene is just as chaotic. Police cars swarm the intersection, sirens wailing as officers set up a perimeter. The area is flooded with first responders and onlookers, everyone waiting to see how this high-stakes standoff will end. In the midst of the swarm, the gears of the police department are grinding, trying to find a way to resolve this without a dead politician on their hands. Commissioner Kakizaki is already on the scene, megaphone in hand. He screams for Mr. Asanuma to let the hostage go, but his voice is thin against the backdrop of the city. He's a man who prefers handling things behind closed doors, and having his failure broadcasted to the world is clearly taking a toll. Shingo Sik stands behind him, his face set in a grim expression as he realizes just how out of their depth they are. Asanuma isn't listening to the commissioner. He leans out the window, his voice booming through his own megaphone, demanding to see Kurokochi Keita. He calls Kurokochi a good agent who actually listened to his story, a statement that sends a ripple of confusion and shock through the gathered officers. Kakizaki's eyes bulge with rage. The last person he wants involved in this mess is the man he just tried to throw out of the force. Desperate, Kakizaki orders his men to call Kurokochi's mobile immediately. But the news only gets worse. The inspector's work phone is off, and he's officially on leave. The commissioner is losing control of the situation, his face turning a deep shade of red as he realizes they are completely dependent on the department's most corrupt officer. Does no one know his private number? He bellows, his frustration reaching a breaking point. Shingo Sik steps forward, his voice steady despite the chaos. I know his private phone number, he announces, pulling out his own mobile. Kakizaki looks at him with a mix of suspicion and relief, urging him to hurry up and make the call. For once, Kurokochi's habit of handing out his personal number to rookies is actually proving useful to the department, even if the commissioner hates to admit it. Kurokochi answers the phone with his usual casual tone, completely unfazed by the life-and-death situation unfolding just blocks away. Kakizaki grabs the phone, barking that Asanuma refuses to talk to anyone else and ordering Kurokochi to get his ass down there immediately. Kurokochi just smirks, taking his time as he walks toward the police line, his trench coat fluttering in the breeze like a dark omen. Kurokochi arrives on the scene with his own megaphone, looking more like a spectator than a negotiator. He mocks the idea that he isn't made for negotiations just because of his small-time thug face. Kakizaki is practically vibrating with anxiety, pushing Kurokochi forward to talk to the hostage-taker. Okay, I'll see what I can do. Kurokochi drawls, his half-lidded eyes hiding the complex plan already forming in his head. Kurokochi doesn't use the megaphone for peace. He uses it for truth. Asanuma, it's me, he bellows before immediately dropping a bombshell that makes the entire crowd go silent. He publicly accuses Den Sukajichi of murdering Asanuma's son and framing it as a suicide. He doesn't just address the hostage-taker. He broadcasts the politician's crimes to every reporter and camera in the vicinity. It's a masterstroke of public shaming. Asanuma responds, his voice crackling with raw emotion through the megaphone. He promises to turn himself in immediately if the police agree to investigate his son's death fairly. Kakizaki is sweating now, realizing the narrative is slipping away from him. The crowd is starting to mutter, the cameras are rolling, and the corruption of the elite is being laid bare in real time. This wasn't the negotiation the commissioner had in mind. Kurokochi puts on a show of mock regret, bowing deeply as he announces that he sadly can't help. He tells the hostage-taker and the entire world that he's just been transferred and isn't an inspector anymore. He's making the police department's internal politics a public spectacle, using the crisis to stick it to the man who tried to get rid of him. Kakizaki can only watch in horror as his own plan backfires spectacularly. The blackmail is out in the open now. Asanuma screams into his megaphone, demanding that the transfer be canceled immediately. Kurokochi stands there, cool and collected, pointing toward Kakazaki as the one responsible for the stupid decision. The commissioner is trapped between a hostage situation and a public relations nightmare, and Kurokochi is enjoying every single second of his discomfort. The pressure reaches a fever pitch. Ijichi, with a knife at his throat, starts screaming for Kakazaki to do whatever Kurokochi asks. Asanuma threatens to kill the politician and then himself if his demands aren't met. Kurokochi just continues his act, telling them that in the police department, transfers are absolute and there's nothing he can do. He's twisting the knife, making sure Kakazaki feels every ounce of the desperation. Asanuma is at the end of his rope, screaming about how you can't put a price on life. Kurokochi looks on with a bored expression, reminding the commissioner that without proof, the accusations against Ijichi are baseless, so they can't simply cave in, right? He's playing both sides, pushing the situation to the absolute limit just to see Kakazaki break. And break he does. I rescind your transfer. The commissioner mutters, his pride shattered. Kurokochi isn't satisfied with a whisper. He forces Kakazaki to announce it through the megaphone for everyone to hear. Inspector Kurokochi will stay in the 2nd Division, the commissioner bellows, his voice cracking. The crowd erupts, and Kurokochi just smiles, snatching the megaphone back to thank his generous superior. He's won his job back, and he's done it in the most humiliating way possible for the brass. Do you have a motive, or any proof? He asks, turning back to the business at hand. Asanuma finally brings out the evidence, the black notebook his son kept. This notebook is irrefutable evidence, he screams, holding it high for everyone to see. He finally has the attention of the world, and the proof of the corruption that destroyed his family is now in plain sight. Ijichi looks like he's about to faint, his political career and his freedom evaporating in an instant. It's the justice Asanuma has been fighting for, and it's finally here. With his mission accomplished, the adrenaline finally leaves Asanuma's body. He collapses to the ground, huffing and gasping as the police move in to secure the scene. Ijichi is left trembling, his face a mask of pure terror. Kakazaki can only stare in open-mouthed shock at the wreckage of his afternoon. Kurokochi's theater of the absurd has come to an end, leaving behind a shattered politician and a disgraced commissioner. Kurokochi stands in the middle of the street, that signature gap-toothed grin plastered across his face. He's the only one who seems happy with how things turned out. Behind him, Shingo Seek looks on with an expression of pure horror. He's beginning to realize that Kurokochi didn't do any of this for justice or for the victim. He did it for leverage. This scummy detective has just proven he's the most powerful man in the department. Seek is left feeling hollow, his ideals of law and order crumbling. I'm not even surprised anymore. He mutters, his eyes dull with exhaustion. He's seen enough of Kurokochi's world for one day. As the city lights flicker to life and the sirens fade into the distance, the weight of the truth starts to settle. This isn't a story about a hero saving the day. It's about a monster who knows how to use the system's own filth to get what he wants. Later that night, the world keeps turning. Kurokochi meets with Kenta Takamiya at a dimly lit bar, the atmosphere far removed from the chaos of the library. Takamiya, a man who knows the dark side of the city better than most, pours a drink as Kurokochi celebrates his victory. "Congratulations," he says, though there's a hardness in his eyes. Kurokochi just laughs, already looking ahead to the next game. The 13-year-old mystery is still out there, and he's just getting started. In the dim light of the Black Coach Bar, Kurokochi Keita lets out a jagged laugh. He taunts Kenta Takamiya, asking if anyone knows he's the secret owner of such a place. Takamiya, with the cold eyes of a man who's seen too much, just stares back. Kurokochi leans in, mocking his own puny police salary while eyeing Takamiya's hidden wealth. This isn't just a casual drink, it's an interrogation. The conversation shifts back 13 years to a cold night and a money convoy robbery that shook the underworld. 50 million yen in pachinko profits vanished into thin air. The prime suspect was none other than Kenta Takamiya, a rising enforcer for the Akaba Yakuza clan. The shadows of that night still loom large over both men. Kurokochi points out the strange facts. Takamiya took the maximum 12-year sentence without a single appeal. He sat in silence, protecting a secret worth 50 million yen. Kurokochi blows a cloud of smoke, his eyes narrowing. He knows that money didn't just disappear. It was moved, and he's determined to find where it landed. The table between them feels like a battlefield. Kurokochi reminds Takamiya that even the best prosecutors couldn't break him back then. Takamiya sticks to his old lie, that he blew it all on women, games, and expensive booze. But Kurokochi isn't buying the big spender act. He knows Takamiya better than that. With a sharp laugh, Kurokochi slaps a 10,000 yen note onto the table, his signature gap-toothed grin widening. "Come on, spit it out," he urges. He's tired of the games. He wants the truth about the heist, and he's willing to pay, or blackmail, to get it. Takamiya remains a stone wall, but even stone eventually cracks. Kurokochi pulls out a remote and clicks on the news. The headline flashes across the screen. A corpse has been identified in the mountains not far from their location. Takamiya watches, his composure finally showing a slight tremor. The past is literally being unearthed, and it's smelling of rot. The remains belong to Ruji Haitani, a freelance journalist who vanished 13 years ago, the same year as the heist. The police are treating it as a homicide. Kurokochi watches Takamiya's reaction closely. The missing journalist is the key that fits into the lock of Takamiya's silence. Kurokochi chuckles, calling Haitani less of a journalist and more of a master blackmailer. Rumor has it that right before he died, Haitani was bragging about a piece of information that would net him 50 million yen, the exact sum that disappeared from the convoy. The coincidence is too loud to ignore. Takamiya knocks back his drink, the alcohol doing little to dull the sharp edges of Kurokochi's questions. Kurokochi keeps pushing, mentioning how Haitani's story was supposed to bring in the big payout. Suddenly, he pivots. He starts talking about the current political climate, leaving Takamiya momentarily off balance. In Kurokochi's world, everything is connected. The news transitions to Prime Minister Sakai's new economic council. Among the 5 young finance experts is a man named Shinosuke Ayakawa. As Ayakawa's face appears on the screen, the atmosphere in the bar shifts. This man represents the light of the prefecture, a stark contrast to the shadows where Kurokochi and Takamiya reside. "Our prefecture's hope," Takamiya says, his voice tinged with something like pride. But Kurokochi's smile remains predatory. He knows that even hope has a history. He stares at Ayakawa's clean-cut image, ready to peel back the layers and find the dirt beneath the polish. Kurokochi reveals that even a high-flyer like Ayakawa had trouble 13 years ago. Creative accounting caught the eye of a prosecutor, but the charges were dropped without explanation. Rumors of a 50 million yen bribe swirled around the case. There's that number again, 50 million. It's the recurring theme of a very dark symphony. Always the same sum, Kurokochi muses, leaning back. The coincidence is too perfect to be anything but a conspiracy. As he prepares to leave, he leaves Takamiya with a final, chilling thought. The Yakuza enforcer watches him go, his hands clenched. The storm Kurokochi just unleashed is only beginning to brew. Outside in the city night, Shinosuke Ayakawa steps out of a sleek car. He looks every bit the successful businessman, but his eyes are cold as he dismisses his driver. He thinks he's safe in his world of finance and power, but the shadows are catching up to him. 15 on the parking spot. Everything has its place, and Ayakawa is right where Kurokochi wants him. The city's neon lights glow over Hotel Shadow. Ayakawa spots a woman waiting on the corner, her presence a temptation in the dark. He's a man of high status, but he still seeks the baser thrills of the night. He doesn't notice the scruffy detective watching him from across the street. Even the hope of the prefecture has a price. Ayakawa approaches the woman, his smile smooth and practiced. Want to take a ride in my car? He asks, the predator hiding behind a veneer of charm. He thinks he's the one in control, but he has no idea that Kurokochi Keita is already steps ahead, waiting for him to make a mistake. The night is full of traps, and Ayakawa just walked into one. In the privacy of a dark corner, Ayakawa's mask slips. His expression turns menacing, his eyes dark with a hidden violence. He reaches for his belt, his intent far more sinister than a simple ride. He's a man who's used to making problems disappear, and he thinks this night will be no different. But someone is watching. Ayakawa pulls a stun gun from his waistband, his teeth bared in a snarl. He's ready to strike, but a voice from the shadows stops him cold. Kurokochi appears, leaning against a wall with that maddeningly calm expression. The finance expert's blood runs cold as he realizes his secret life just became public knowledge to the most dangerous cop in the city. Kurokochi doesn't even flinch. He asks Ayakawa directly about his connection to Ken Takamiya. He's dug up info on both of them, but this one mystery, the bond between the Hope and the Yakuza, is the piece he's missing. Ayakawa's arrogance evaporates, replaced by a deep, shivering dread. The game has changed. Kurokochi drops the bombshell. Both Ayakawa and Takamiya lost their parents at a very young age. Takamiya looks away, his silence confirming the truth. Kurokochi's research was thorough. He knows they didn't just meet in the underworld. They grew up together. The light and the shadow were born in the same room. They were brothers in every way that mattered, spending 2 short but intense years in the same orphanage. One chose the path to the sunlight of finance, while the other took the route to the shadows of the Yakuza. But even separate paths couldn't break a bond forged in shared tragedy. Takamiya refuses to believe his brother would ever betray him. He loved me like a brother, Takamiya shouts, desperate to preserve the one good thing in his life. But Kurokochi's voice is like a cold splash of water. He used you mean? He retorts. He asks what Ayakawa really told him that made Takamiya willing to risk everything and rob that convoy 13 years ago. The truth is much uglier than Takamiya wants to admit. The flashback reveals the desperate truth. Ryuji Haitani was threatening to expose their friendship, a scandal that would have destroyed Ayakawa's bright future. Haitani wanted 50 million yen to stay quiet. Ayakawa, panicked and sweating, turned to the only person he could trust, his Yakuza brother. He begged for help, his eyes wild with fear. Takamiya believed his brother was a victim, robbing the convoy only to discover that Ayakawa had already chosen a much darker path: murder. Takamiya held onto his honor, but Ayakawa traded his soul for silence. As the flashback ends, the weight of the betrayal settles in. A brother protected at the cost of a journalist's life. Kurokochi reveals the final twist. The heist money didn't buy off Haitani. It silenced a prosecutor. But there's one more shadow left to uncover. Kurokochi's eyes lock on Takamiya's as he asks the most dangerous question of all. What was the secret Haitani really found? A secret so depraved that even a 50 million yen robbery was just the tip of the iceberg. Kurokochi Keita leans in, his voice a low, mocking growl. He reveals the true secret Ryuji Haitani was holding over Ayakawa Shinosuke. It wasn't just a Yakuza friendship. The golden boy of finance has a dark, violent addiction to assaulting prostitutes. In a flashback, we see Haitani catching him in the act, grinning like he's just hit the jackpot. Ayakawa's perfect image is crumbling, and he can only scream lies in a desperate attempt to stay in the light. Flashback to a rain-slicked night. Ayakawa is in his car, a woman's terrified face visible through the glass. Kurokochi knocks on the window, his presence like a shark in dark water. Ayakawa tries to brush him off, busy with his hobby, but Kurokochi doesn't take no for an answer. He pulls his service weapon, the barrel reflecting the city lights. "Police, open the door," he bellows, the game finally coming to an end. The golden boy remains frozen, his eyes wide with a mix of shock and cowardice. Kurokochi's patience is gone. He lets out a primal roar. "Come on, open it," and delivers a thunderous kick to the car door. The BM echoes through the empty lot, shattering the silence and Ayakawa's remaining composure. The door groans under the force, as inevitable as the justice Kurokochi is about to serve. Inside the car, the horror is laid bare. Ayakawa sits shirtless, his face a mask of sweating panic. Beside him, a bloodied and battered woman reaches out with a trembling hand, her eyes pleading through the gore. "Help!" she gasps. This is the reality behind the economic hope of the prefecture, a monster who preys on the vulnerable under the cover of the night. Back in the present, Takemiya Kenta is vibrating with a cold, righteous fury. He stares at the brother he sacrificed 12 years of his life for, calling him a filthy piece of trash. The betrayal is total. Ayakawa is a pathetic sight now, shirtless and groveling, his facade completely destroyed. Kurokochi watches the exchange with his usual cynical detachment. He's seen this play 1,000 times before. Takemiya moves to silence the scum once and for all, but Kurokochi's hand is firm on his shoulder. "Stop. There's no point going back behind bars for scum of this kind," he warns. Ayakawa, the coward to the end, screams for help, begging the very officer who just exposed him to protect him from his brother's wrath. It's a pathetic display of a man who's lost everything but his fear. Kurokochi lays it out for the broken Yakuza. He tells Takemiya to tell the police the truth, that he gave the 50 million to Ayakawa. With that confession, the Golden Boy will get 20 years for the murder of Haitani. Takemiya is left staring into the abyss of his own choices. Before they finish, Kurokochi has one last question, a final probe into the heart of this tragedy. "Why did you protect him this much? Tell me the truth," Kurokochi asks, his voice surprisingly soft. Takemiya's eyes fill with a tragic, lingering light as he looks toward the city skyline. "Because I loved him," he whispers. "It was a brotherly bond forged in the orphanage, a love so deep it was worth a robbery and a prison sentence. But in the end, it was a love wasted on a man who didn't know the meaning of the word." The scene shifts to the Kanagawa Police HQ, where the air is thick with tension. Shingo Seek meets Kurokochi, warning him that the guys from the First Division are absolutely furious that he stole their spotlight. Kurokochi just scoffs. What a bunch of tight arses. He's never been one for police politics, especially when there are bigger prizes on the horizon. Seek admits he's reassured by Kurokochi's motives. At least he wasn't after the 50 million this time, but the culprit the root of it all. But Kurokochi's next words chill him to the bone. "You don't get it. The reason I was so attached to this case wasn't because of some murderer or the 50 million. He says, his eyes narrowing. He's aiming for something much larger, a big fish that has remained in the shadows for far too long. The real target is the prosecutor who took Ayakawa's bribe 13 years ago. A man who used that 50 million to climb the ladder of power. Nowadays, he isn't just a simple prosecutor." Kurokochi muses. He's chasing a ghost with a high-ranking title, a man who built a career on the foundation of a cover-up. The corruption goes all the way to the top. Seek is visibly shaken, his idealistic worldview taking another hit. "Who are you talking about?" he asks, his voice barely a whisper. Kurokochi just flashes that sinister, gap-toothed grin. "You'll see," he promises. He's a man who loves the reveal as much as the hunt, and he knows this particular revelation is going to shake the entire department to its core. Flashback to the day of Kenta Takemiya's release. The heavy iron gates of the prison creak open with a long, metallic groan. After 12 long years, the Yakuza enforcer finally steps back into the world of the living. The guards offer their generic farewells. "Be well, Takemiya," but their eyes say they hope he never darkens their door again. The air of freedom is sweet, but it carries a heavy price. Waiting for him just outside the gates is Kurokochi Keita, casually leaning against the hood of a red Ferrari. It's an absurd sight, a detective in a car that costs 10 years of his salary. Finally out of the slammer, he asks, his tone as light as if they were old friends meeting for lunch. He's already reclaiming his stake in Takemiya's new life, before the man has even taken his first breath of free air. Kurokochi flashes that signature grin, his eyes dancing with a predatory mirth. He looks like a man who knows exactly what you're thinking and is already 2 steps ahead. There's no warmth in that smile, only the cold calculation of a man who sees everyone as either an asset or a target. To Takamiya, it's a terrifyingly familiar sight. Takamiya observes that Kurokochi truly hasn't changed. A real man like none today, he says with a hint of begrudging respect. He tries to push back, telling the detective he won't get anything out of him. But Kurokochi just laughs it off. "Come on, don't be that way. I'll buy you a drink," he says, his hand already on Takamiya's shoulder. He's leading him into the next phase of his plan, whether the Yakuza wants to go or not. The city night is vibrant as they approach the Black Coach Bar. The neon lights and the sleek interior speak of a world of high-stakes deals and hidden agendas. It's the perfect backdrop for the conversation that's about to take place. The sign swings gently in the breeze, a silhouette of a horse-drawn carriage that represents a much older, darker kind of commerce. "Hi there, boss," the barman greets, confirming Kurokochi's status in this sanctuary. They head to the VIP room, away from the prying eyes and ears of the main floor. Kurokochi is in his element here, playing the generous host as he pours a drink for the newly released convict. The atmosphere is calm, but the undercurrent of the conversation is anything but. He's setting the stage, softening the target before the real interrogation begins. He knows that every man has a story, and most are willing to tell it for the right price. Kurokochi stands in the hallway of the bar, a shadow against the well-lit interior. He's wrapping up his business for the night, his mind already spinning forward to the next move. He carries the weight of the secrets he's just unearthed with a casual ease that is both impressive and deeply unsettling. The game is never over for him. It just moves to a different location. The perspective shifts. A hidden lens captures Kurokochi as he leaves the black coach and heads for the parking lot. The target is leaving the black coach. He's at the parking lot. A voice crackles over a radio. He's being watched, monitored by a team that moves in the same shadows he does. His Ferrari roars to life, a red streak heading toward the Ishimoto district, and the hunters are right on his heels. Inside a surveillance van, the screens glow with data and live feeds. Teams A and B follow him, a commander orders. Every movement of Kurokochi's car is tracked with military precision. This isn't just a standard police investigation. This is something much higher, much more secretive. The men behind the screens are specialists, and their target is one of their own. Tack, tack, tack goes the keyboard as they dig deeper into the life of the detective. A man in a sharp suit, Ryota, steps into the van. "Ryota, it's me," the man inside greets. The atmosphere is professional but charged with an intense curiosity. They are looking at the man behind the Ferrari, the scruffy inspector who somehow manages to live like a billionaire. They are looking for the rot that Kurokochi has made a career out of hiding. A click sounds as more files are opened, revealing the dark architecture of a hidden life. Hideo, the man in the floral shirt, looks up from his terminal. "Anything new, Hideo?" Ryota asks. The report is staggering. Kurokochi has 15 million yen in his official bank account, but another account under a false name holds 200 million. For a government official without a family, it's an impossible sum. But Hideo is just getting started. The 200 million is just the tip of the iceberg in a sea of hidden wealth. The numbers just keep climbing. Between the shares and real estate, Kurokochi's hidden fortune has surged well past 300 million yen, and that's excluding his fleet of luxury cars and a private yacht. A simple inspector with this kind of capital? Ryota gasps, unable to reconcile the man's scruffy appearance with a bank account that rivals a cartel boss. They aren't just watching a dirty cop. They're tracking a financial ghost who has successfully monetized every secret in the city. The rumors are confirmed, every dirty cent of it. With assets now estimated upwards of 500 million yen, Kurokochi has built a private empire on the rot of the system. He's certainly no model policeman, Hideo mutters, eyes red from the screen's glow as the scale of the corruption settles in. Ryota presses for the order to move, but the command remains chillingly patient. "Not yet," comes the reply. They are content to let the detective drive further into the night, unaware that a much colder shadow is already beginning to reach out from the depths of the district prosecutor's office. Kurokochi Keita stands in the shadows of an overpass, the smoke from his cigarette curling up into the gray sky. He looks like a man with all the time in the world, but his mind is already several steps ahead of the law. A dark Lexus idles nearby, its presence as cold and professional as the men who drive it. The gears of a much larger machine are started to turn. Inside the sterile confines of an interrogation room, the power dynamic is clear. A former high-ranking official sits across from a man who radiates cold, calculated authority. This is Yataro Ekigo, the head of criminal investigations at the district prosecutor's office. He's a man who doesn't believe in small talk, only in the cold, hard facts that bring men to their knees. Ekigo introduces himself with a terrifying calmness. He mocks the former official's status, implying that his rank won't save him from what's coming. The prisoner tries to play it cool, scoffing at the prosecutor's caliber, but the sweat on his brow tells a different story. The room feels smaller with every word Ekigo speaks. The list of charges is a descent into madness. Murder and rape of a teenager, the cold-blooded assassination of a family of 3, and the deaths of 2 police inspectors. The prisoner has lost his touch with age, but his crimes are as fresh as the day they were committed. Ekigo recites them with a photographic memory, each syllable a nail in the man's coffin. Despite the irrefutable proof, DNA, fingerprints, even an incriminating letter from his deceased secretary, the prisoner remains defiant. He pleads not guilty with a sickeningly confident smile. The situation from tomorrow onwards will be very different, he warns, his eyes narrowing. He thinks he has a guardian angel, a power that can reach into this room and set him free. Ekigo ends the session for the day, unfazed by the prisoner's threats. As the guards lead the man away, he leans in and whispers a final, chilling promise. Soon, you'll be grateful you didn't incur my wrath. Ekigo watches him go, a thin, satisfied smile playing on his lips. To him, this has been a very productive day. The hunt is nearing its conclusion. Ekigo's private thoughts are even darker. He sees the man's soul as black as coal. Outside the station, a media circus has erupted. Reporters and cameras swarm the Iasegawa police entrance, all waiting for a glimpse of the fallen wolf of the finance world. The public hunger for justice is at a fever pitch, and the spectacle is just beginning. The TV reports are everywhere. Shinosuke Ayakawa is officially a suspect in the 13-year-old murder of journalist Ruji Haitani, the man whose body was unceremoniously dumped in a ravine. Ayakawa is seen entering the station, his head bowed, the light of his brilliant career finally extinguished by the shadows of the past. He is led into an interrogation room, the very one he's been dreading for a decade. The door clicks open, and in walks the last person Ayakawa wanted to see, Kurokochi Keita. The finance expert's eyes go wide with a mix of shock and pure terror. Kurokochi doesn't look like a cop. He looks like the monster Ayakawa thought he'd outrun. The good agent has finally come to collect his due, and the price is going to be astronomical. Kurokochi is in no hurry. He tells Ayakawa to go breathe some fresh air, mocking the man's desperate situation. Ayakawa tries to muster some remaining pride, telling the detective that his fate is none of his concern. But Kurokochi just laughs, his gap-toothed grin more menacing than any threat. He's not here to follow procedure. He's here to rewrite the script. Kurokochi leans in, his face inches from Ayakawa's. Murder? Think again. It was clearly an involuntary homicide, he purrs. He wants to review their little story before the First Division, the real cops, arrive to take their statements. He's offering Ayakawa a way out, a narrative that won't end in a life sentence. It's a deal from the devil himself, and Ayakawa is starting to listen. Kurokochi weaves a tale of a last-minute witness and an unfortunate accident. He tells Ayakawa to plead involuntary manslaughter, claiming that he only killed Haitani in self-defense after the journalist got angry about a small bribe. It's a perfect, untraceable lie. 13 years have passed, the evidence is gone, and everyone is forgotten, everyone except the man standing in front of him. The fake narrative is chillingly detailed. Kurokochi describes Ayakawa defending himself with desperation, leading to Haitani's fatal fall into a ravine. Ayakawa is speechless, his jaw hanging open as he watches his dark secret being transformed into a manageable legal problem. But the help comes with a catch. I want to know the name of the prosecutor you bribed 13 years ago. Kurokochi demands, his hand outstretched for the ultimate piece of leverage. Ayakawa is paralyzed by the question. "Why are you helping me after you caught me?" he screams, his mind unable to process Kurokochi's twisted sense of justice. He realizes he's just a pawn in a much larger game, one where the rules are written in blood and bribes. The First Division can only rely on his deposition, and Kurokochi is the only one who can make it a favorable one. But the cost is the truth Ayakawa promised to take to his grave. Ayakawa tries to resist, whispering that he can't possibly tell him. But Kurokochi already has the answer. He leans back, his voice as cold as ice. "Yutaro Ekigo, head of criminal investigations," he announces. The name hits Ayakawa like a physical blow. The very man leading the investigation today is the one who took the bribe all those years ago. The circle is complete, and the rot is absolute. Kurokochi flashes that predatory grin, his eyes boring into the broken man across from him. "Right?" he asks, already knowing the truth. Ayakawa's face is a mask of pure, unadulterated fear. He's caught between two monsters, one who wants to protect the secret and one who wants to use it to burn the whole system down. There is no escape from the world Kurokochi has built. Later, Kurokochi ambushes Yutaro Ekigo right outside the station. The head of investigations is trying to leave in his sleek car, but Kurokochi stands in his path, waving his arms like a madman. Ekigo is visibly annoyed, barking at the dirty inspector to organize a meeting like everyone else. But Kurokochi just laughs, claiming he needs to speak about an important case, the very one they both have a stake in. Kurokochi acts like they're old pals, putting a hand on Ekigo's shoulder and grinning as they walk together. Ekigo's expression is one of pure disgust. He despises everything Kurokochi represents, but he knows he can't just walk away. They are two sides of the same corrupt coin, and they both know it. The public might see a dedicated prosecutor and a scummy detective, but the truth is far more complicated. The scene cuts back to the interrogation of the former official. Ekigo is back at his desk, his composure regained. But the power dynamic has shifted. The prisoner is no longer a victim. He's an informant. He stares at the prosecutor with a new, dangerous understanding. The air in the room is heavy with the weight of the secrets about to be shared. The prisoner tells Ekigo, "It was quicker than I thought," and demands that he make his secretary leave for confidential matters. Ekigo hesitates for a split second, his eyes narrowing, but he ultimately gives the order. He knows he can't afford to let anyone else hear what this man is about to say. The majesty of the law is about to be stripped away. The secretary leaves, the click of the door sounding like a final warning. Ekigo sits with his arms crossed, waiting for the blow to fall. "Sorry, can you leave us, please?" he asks his team, his voice steady despite the adrenaline surging through his veins. He is alone with a man who knows his darkest secret, and the interrogation is about to turn into a trial for his own life. The prisoner drops the bombshell. 13 years ago, your boss forced you to accept a bribe. It's Kurokochi, isn't it? He asks, his eyes locked on Ekigo's. The prosecutor's world shatters in an instant. The very secret he spent a decade burying has just been unearthed by a man he was supposed to be convicting. The exclamation point of shock in Ekigo's eyes says everything. The predator has become the prey. The prisoner mentions 2 guns that serve as evidence and demands they be re-examined. He's offering Ekigo a deal. "I can give you the means to forget about the past," in exchange for his cooperation. Ekigo is cornered, his jaw set in a grim line. "What do you want?" he asks, the desperation finally starting to leak through his professional facade. The give and take of the underworld has reached the highest levels of the law. The prisoner leans forward, his hands clasped tightly, as he begins to peel back the facade of the system. He reveals that Shima and Goto, the two murdered officers, weren't just casualties of a standard case. They were members of a secret society operating deep within the force. Listen very closely, prosecutor, he urges, his voice dropping to a low, gravelly whisper. He's about to disclose the dark secret that keeps the gears of the police department turning, no matter the cost. He explains that this organization, known as the Sakura Council, is a clandestine network of active and retired officers nationwide. Their mandate is simple: do the dirty work required to maintain the police's majestic public image. In this shadow world, legal obstacles are removed by any means necessary, including murder. Ekigo is stunned as the prisoner lays out the grim reality that for the force to appear fair and majestic to the outside world, the law must often be discarded behind closed doors. The prisoner leans in, his face etched with the grim reality of the system he helped build. He tells Ekigo that when the police make mistakes, they have no other choice than hiding everything. Ekigo remains silent, his stoic expression masking the internal storm these revelations are causing. The majesty of the law is being replaced by the cold, hard logic of a cover-up. The prisoner's eyes burn with an intense, dark fire. You have to act outside the law, he insists. He speaks of a shadow society intertwined with the police force, a group whose activities don't stop at bribery or intimidation. They go all the way to murder. Ekigo can feel the weight of the moral abyss opening up beneath him, the very foundation of his career starting to crack. The name is finally spoken: the Sakura Council. The symbol of the Japanese police, the cherry blossom, has been claimed by a society of killers. The prisoner confirms that Shima and Goto, the two officers whose deaths they were investigating, were both members. They weren't victims of a random crime. They were pieces of a much larger, deadlier puzzle. Ekigo stares out at the city skyline, the lights of Kanagawa looking more like a graveyard than a metropolis. "Why tell me all this?" he asks, his voice barely a whisper. The prisoner's answer is chilling. The council is looking for collaborators, people with the power to erase mistakes. People like the prisoner and people like the head of investigations himself. They want Ekigo in the fold. The prisoner becomes desperate, begging Ekigo to accept the meeting he can arrange. He promises that in exchange for his cooperation, the Sakura Council will do anything he asks. They are the ultimate problem solvers, the ones who can make any inconvenience, even a person, simply disappear. The price of admission is Ekigo's soul, and the prisoner is more than happy to act as the broker. The prisoner's true, venomous intent finally bursts forth. Ask them to kill Kurokochi. Right now, he screams, his face a mask of pure, unadulterated hate. He's terrified of the detective, a man who knows too much and isn't afraid to use it. To the prisoner, Kurokochi is a cancer that needs to be cut out of the system immediately. The request hangs in the air, a death sentence waiting for a signature. The transition is instant. Inside the surveillance van, the air is electric with a dark purpose. Hideo, the man in the floral shirt, receives the word he's been waiting for. The order has arrived. Hideo, the plan is to be executed immediately, he bellows into his headset. The hunters are no longer just watching. They're moving for the kill. Everyone to your assigned positions. The machine has been activated. Unaware of the wolves circling him, Kurokochi Keita strolls out of a building, whistling a carefree tune. He's in high spirits, having just secured his position and uncovered another layer of rot. Shingo Seek is walking nearby, his mind preoccupied with the fallout of the library incident. The city feels normal, bustling with life, but the atmosphere is charged with a hidden violence. Kurokochi spots his partner and waves him down. "Hey there, Shingo," he calls out, his gap-toothed grin as wide as ever. Seek is as annoyed as usual, checking his watch and muttering about not having time for Kurokochi's games. In the background, a lone cyclist in a gray hoodie weaves through the pedestrians, a silent shadow approaching the two detectives. Justice and corruption are about to collide in the most literal way possible. Come on, don't be such a downer. Kurokochi laughs, completely oblivious to the threat behind him. He's the ultimate predator, yet even he has a blind spot. A close-up reveals the bicycle wheels spinning faster and faster, a blurring circle of impending doom. The cyclist isn't just passing through. He's lining up his shot. The city's white noise is about to be shattered. Bang! Bang! Two deafening gunshots ring out, the sound echoing off the tall buildings and sending the pedestrians into a panic. Time seems to slow down as the impact hits. The mundane street scene is transformed into a crime scene in a heartbeat. The good agent has finally met someone who doesn't want to talk. The hitman on the bicycle doesn't hesitate. He pulls a revolver from his hoodie, fires with a cold, practiced efficiency, and then immediately pedals away, disappearing into the chaos. Kurokochi's eye goes wide, a split second of pure, unadulterated shock registering before the pain sets in. He never saw it coming, and the Sakura Council's cleanup has officially begun. Kurokochi looks down, his hands trembling as they clutch his chest. Blood splatters against the light fabric of his trench coat, a dark, spreading stain that matches the darkness of the city he knows so well. He collapses onto the pavement, his strength failing him. Kurokochi! Seek screams, rushing toward his fallen partner. The chapter ends on a bloody sidewalk, with the life of the most corrupt detective in Kanagawa hanging by a thread. The K-Vat has been bitten by its own kind. In a shocking turn of events, the streets are stained with blood. Kurokochi Keita lies motionless on the pavement as Shingo Seek stands over him, paralyzed by the sight of the veteran inspector down. Panic sets in. Shingo Seek screams for him to hang on, his face contorted in desperation, while Kurokochi Keita remains unresponsive in a growing pool of red. Is this really the end for the man who knew too much? The news spreads like wildfire. Across the city, television screens broadcast the grim report. A policeman was shot in broad daylight in one of the city's trendiest neighborhoods. In waiting rooms and public spaces, people watch in silence. The reporter confirms that although the officer was rushed to the hospital, he remains in critical condition. The tension in the air is palpable. While the police hunt for the culprit, Shingo Seek paces the sterile hallways of the intensive care unit. The weight of the situation bears down on him. The line between life and death has never felt so thin. A breakthrough in the case. The news reports that the culprit has turned himself in, claiming it was a case of mistaken identity involving a criminal organization. Seek immediately corners the doctor, desperate for any update on the man inside. Seek cautiously enters the room. The sight is grim. Kurokochi Keita is hooked up to a labyrinth of monitors and tubes, but the doctor offers a sliver of hope. The inspector is awake and able to speak. Close up, the veteran inspector looks pale and broken under his oxygen mask. It's hard to believe this is the same man who was Tong Tien officials just days ago. Kurokochi, Seek exclaims, nearly jumping out of his skin. Despite the tubes and the trauma, Kurokochi Keita manages a weak, characteristic greeting. He's alive, and somehow he's still himself. The secret to his survival? Pure greed. Kurokochi displays a thick wad of hoi lo cash with a bullet hole right through the center. The money he took from the corrupt actually slowed the bullet enough to save his life. Seek doesn't know whether to laugh or cry. The official police line is that the shooter mistook the officer for a rival gang leader. But Kurokochi isn't buying it. He knows the truth behind the smoke and mirrors of the official report. That was no mistake, Kurokochi insists. He recalls the moment the trigger was pulled. Their eyes met. The shooter knew exactly who he was aiming at. This wasn't a random gang hit. It was a targeted execution. Kurokochi explains that the confession is a sham meant to hide the true motive. Seek is confused. Why would the Akaba clan go to such lengths? Kurokochi's gaze is cold. He knows he's poked a very dangerous nest. Kurokochi claims he never messed with the Yakuza directly, but the Akaba clan definitely has a reason to want him gone. He looks at Seek, the wheels in his head already turning for the next move. He tells Seek to investigate why the clan suddenly grew balls after 10 years of peace with the police. The First Division won't question a free confession, so it's up to them to find what's being buried. Kurokochi gives his first order: find a man named Hosoyamada. In another room, a man screams in fury. The pressure is mounting, and the job wasn't finished. Kurokochi knows his time in this bed is limited. Hosoyamada is an ex-politician who knows where all the bodies are buried. As they talk, Seek wonders why someone with Kurokochi's rank and experience isn't a squad leader by now. The answer is simple. The higher-ups don't want him anywhere near young, impressionable officers. Kurokochi smiles. He's a leader without a squad because the brass is terrified he'll corrupt the entire force. Because you're a bit like my partner in crime, Kurokochi says with a sinister grin. Seek can only stare in disbelief, wondering how his life of justice ended up tied to this man. Following the lead, Seek tracks down Hosoyamada in a busy public building. The atmosphere is tense. Hosoyamada isn't happy about being seen with a cop, even one as straight-laced as Seek. Hosoyamada is blunt. The more I'm seen, the more risks I take. He begins to explain the transformation of the Akaba clan. 10 years ago, they reconverted 90% of their assets, moving away from street crime. They became a legitimate company, investing in real estate and entertainment. But the remaining 10%, that's where the real filth lives: money laundering, blackmail, and silencing scandals. They didn't go clean, they just got smarter. The shadow organization behind it all is called Sakura Holdings. Hosoyamada reveals that even the criminals are just cogs in a larger machine owned by a mysterious hedge fund. In the end, criminals stay criminals, no matter the name on the building. Hosoyamada hands Shingo Seek a small deposit key, offering one last lead. Go see Jingoro Akaba, the legendary former head of the clan. He's the only one left who can speak on the true nature of Sakura Holdings and the money moving through it. Tell Kurokochi we're even now. Hosoyamada calls out, vanishing into the crowded station. Seek is left standing alone, his gaze fixed on the plastic tag. Number 551. This key is his only bridge to the next locker, and the dangerous truth hidden inside. Shingo Seek arrives at the station, his heart pounding. He finds locker number 551, the final clue left by Hosoyamada. Whatever is inside is the key to Kurokochi's next move. He twists the key and the locker swings open, revealing a bag stuffed to the brim with stacks of yen. On the phone, Kurokochi Keita's voice is raspy but firm. He tells Seek that it's bribe money, dirty money they'll need to fund an investigation that no one is supposed to know about. Kurokochi's words haunt him through the receiver. Sakura Holdings. Does that name remind you of anything? Seek stands in the crowded station, the name Sakura echoing in his mind like a silent alarm. Like a cherry tree blooming in the middle of a storm, the name Sakura sounds innocent enough, but in the mouth of a man like Kurokochi, it carries a weight that chills Seek to the bone. The conversation takes a sharp, terrifying turn. Kurokochi tells him that they are coming and he needs to disappear immediately. To the rest of the world, the investigation is over, but for Seek, the nightmare is only beginning. Seek's trail leads him to a traditional Japanese estate, a place that feels frozen in time. Somewhere behind these sliding doors lies the truth about the Akaba clan. Inside the quiet, house, Seek waits. A scroll on the wall reads Way of Truth, while a pair of katanas sit prominently on their stand. A stark reminder of the violent heritage of the man he's come to see. A man with a polite, constant smile enters to serve tea. He's the caretaker here, a man whose calm demeanor seems out of place in such a heavy atmosphere. Seek accepts the tea, trying to maintain his professional composure. The master of the house finally arrives. Jingoro Akaba, once the feared king of the Yakuza, is now just a frail old man in a wheelchair. Though his body is failing, his presence still commands the room. Jingoro is amused by the charming young man sitting before him. Seek, curious, asks if the man serving them is his household aide, still unaware of the secret the old man is about to spill. Seek presents the gift, the bag of cash. Jingoro laughs a dry, bitter laugh. He founded the Akaba clan, yet now it's his own former organization, under the guise of a real estate agency, that's trying to kick him out of his own home. Jingoro begins to weave a dark tale. He explains that his clan was always the one to be raided, always the ones arrested, as if they only existed to fill police quotas. And what if it was on purpose? He asks, bringing up Sakura Holdings once more. Do you know what hides behind that name? Jingoro's eyes narrow. He suggests a terrifying truth, that the police have a criminal organization at their disposal to do their dirtiest work. Seek is left speechless, his faith in the system crumbling. Meanwhile, back at the hospital, the hunt for Kurokochi continues. A freckled officer approaches the ICU, claiming he's there to switch shifts. His calm face hides a far more sinister intent. Once alone, the freckled officer's polite mask slips. He prepares a syringe with a twisted, predatory smile. He hasn't come to guard Kurokochi, but to finish the job that the bullet started. He slips into the room, ready to deliver the lethal dose. You're in a sorry state, Inspector, he whispers, his excitement building as he reaches for the man in the bed. But his smile instantly vanishes. The bed is empty. Sheets are thrown back, and the monitors show nothing but static. Kurokochi Keita, the veteran of 1,000 dirty games, has already slipped away into the night. Back at the estate, Jingoro leans in with a final, grave warning for the young cop. Be careful, boy. The Sakura is everywhere. It's not just a company or a clan. It's a shadow that stretches across the entire country. Seek is reeling from the revelation. What are you talking about? He shouts, the weight of the conspiracy finally starting to overwhelm his sense of justice. Jingoro begins to trace the group's history back 40 years, to a robbery that changed everything. But just as he's about to reveal the heart of the secret, the smiling aide interrupts, claiming it's time for medicine. The caretaker insistently guides the conversation to a close, urging the old man not to get too worked up. Seek, sensing the timing is off but unable to stay, agrees to the aide's interruption. Jingoro promises to tell Seek everything he knows if he returns tomorrow. Seek bids him farewell and walks away from the mansion, his mind spinning with the half-truths he just heard. As Seek disappears down the street, he wonders what Jingoro was truly about to say before they were interrupted. Inside, the aide is already preparing the medicine for the Q Thursday Lin. Jingoro Akaba accepts his medicine, completely trusting the man who has cared for him for so long. The aide's smile grows wider, a predatory glint in his eyes as he offers a cruel blessing. You'll even live to see a century. It's a bitter irony that only a killer can truly savor. As the old man focuses on his dose, the caretaker quietly reaches for the cold steel of the katana on the stand. The mask of the loyal servant has finally fallen, replaced by the silent, lethal intent of the Sakura Council's hidden hand. Jingoro Akaba swallows his medicine, completely unaware of the shadow looming behind him. The caretaker he trusted has already drawn the cold steel of the katana. The old man's eyes close for the last time in a moment of false peace. The strike is swift and brutal. With a single, fluid motion, the caretaker cuts down the former Yakuza king right in his wheelchair. Blood sprays across the traditional room, a violent end to a life built on crime. The silence that follows is deafening. The killer stands over the body, breathing heavily as blood stains the tatami. He doesn't look like a man in panic. He looks like a man who has finally completed a long-awaited task. After the deed, he turns himself in, but the truth is already being buried under a mountain of lies. He drops to his knees, his face twisted in a calculated display of regret. The loving caretaker is gone, replaced by a cold-blooded assassin who knows exactly how to play the system he's about to enter. Elsewhere, life in the city's upper echelons continues. A luxury sedan glides through the night as a stern-faced prosecutor discusses the recent assault on the inspector. They speak of the case with a detachment that suggests they've seen far worse. The prosecutor listens as his associate mentions the Yakuza assault. To them, it's just another piece of the puzzle, but for Kurokochi Keita, It was a death sentence that failed to stick. They mentioned the man who stopped them at the detention center, their eyes filled with a quiet suspicion. At police headquarters, Shingo Seek is hit with the devastating news. Jingoro Akaba has been murdered. The information comes as a shock. He was just with the man. To make matters worse, the helper who did it has already confessed. Seek is interrogated by his own colleagues. The suspect claims he reached his tipping point because the old man was frequently violent towards him. Seek is incredulous. That frail, infirm old man? He knows he's listening to a script written in advance. The detectives recount the suspect's claim that Jingoro Akaba would chase him around in his wheelchair with a baseball bat. It sounds ridiculous, yet the suspect has a katana wound in his stomach to prove the struggle. A perfectly staged scene for a perfectly timed murder. The suspicion deepens when Seek learns the suspect was also an ex-yakuza. The detective mentions the company that employed him, a household aid company that, as it turns out, is affiliated with the very Akaba group they were investigating. Seek realized the trap was set long before he arrived. 10 years ago, the Akaba clan reconverted its assets into legitimate businesses like tourism and real estate. But Seek sees the truth now. They even control the services that provide caretakers for the elderly. It's a perfect way to monitor and, if necessary, silence their former leaders. Seek demands to question the suspect immediately. Can I see him first? Seek asks, his patience wearing thin. His superior hesitates, but eventually gives in. Seek doesn't just want a confession. He wants to know who gave the orders for the silence. He arrives at a Nindo hospital, where the suspect is being treated for his struggle wounds. The sterile environment feels suffocating as Seek stands over the man who ended the only lead he had. Why? You cared for him. Seek shouts, his frustration boiling over. The suspect lies there with an indifferent gaze, his silence more maddening than any lie he could tell. Seek hammers him with questions. Who gave the orders? Was he there to monitor Jingoro from the start? Was he promised a high-ranking spot in the organization once he got out of prison? The killer remained silent, a stone wall protecting the secrets of the Sakura Council. But then, a subtle warning escapes the man's lips. Inspector, you should be more cautious. Seek freezes. The warning isn't for the man in the bed. It's for Kurokochi Keita, and by extension, for Seek himself. The warning carries a hidden threat, especially regarding the people around you. Seek stares at the man, realizing that the network they are fighting isn't just external. It's woven into the very fabric of the people they trust. Seek is then pulled aside by his colleagues with even more shocking news. Kurokochi Keita has vanished. He didn't just check out. He ran away from the hospital in the middle of the night. Seek's world continues to spiral into chaos. What? Seek can't believe his ears. The room was empty last night, leaving the police and the assassins clueless as to where the filthy inspector might have gone. That guy, he's always 10 steps ahead of everyone else. Later that night, outside a Nindo hospital, a taxi from Taxi Morishin pulls up beside Seek. The driver leans out, his voice low and mysterious. Do you want to see him? He asks, leaving no doubt about who he means. Seek is hesitant, but the driver repeats the question. He knows Seek is looking for the inspector. With no other choice, Seek slips into the taxi, unaware that he's being driven to a place where even the police dare not go. Meanwhile, the shadow of the freckled hitman still looms over the city. The taxi takes him to the Ayashij Clinic, a place specializing in plastic surgery and orthopedics. It's a nondescript building that hides a very specific type of clientele. Inside, Seek hears a familiar, boisterous laugh. He finds Kurokochi Keita in a hospital gown, laughing so hard he has to clutch his bandaged chest. Hurts like hell when I laugh, he bellows, seemingly unfazed by the fact that half the country is looking for him. Seek can only watch in weary astonishment. Kurokochi explains that this clinic is a sanctuary for anyone with enough cash, the same place where a high-profile female escapee once vanished into a new face. To him, it's the ultimate safe house because he holds the keys to all their dirty secrets. He grins, his eyes gleaming with the same cunning that has kept him alive this long. By turning a blind eye to their illegal activities, he secured himself a ghost-like existence whenever the world becomes too dangerous for an honest, or even a crooked, cop. Seek, still haunted by the blood he saw at Jingoro's mansion, finally demands the answer he's been chasing. What exactly are these Sakura stories? The air in the room suddenly chills as Kurokochi prepares to reveal the impossible. The name finally drops like a heavy stone into a dark well. The Sakura Council. Kurokochi Keida's voice is barely a whisper, yet it resonates with a terrifying authority. The secret that has been hidden for decades is finally out in the open. In the quiet safety of the hidden clinic, Shingo Seek listens as Kurokochi Keida begins to piece together the puzzle. He mentions Jingoro Akaba's last words about a robbery, a specific one that changed the course of Japanese history. Does the 300 million yen robbery ring any bells? Kurokochi asks, his eyes locked on the young cop. Flashback to the 1960s, a cold case that still haunts the nation. A man disguised as a motorcycle patrol officer intercepted an armored truck and walked away with a fortune meant for employee bonuses. It was the perfect crime, and it was never solved. Kurokochi explains the dark theory that the chaos and embarrassment of that incident allowed for the creation of the Sakura Council. To Seek, the connection sounds impossible, a conspiracy theory brought to life. But in this world, impossible is just another word for classified. Outside the hospital, the media circus is in full swing. News crews are currently reporting from the front lines, waiting for any scrap of information about the assassin of the Akaba clan leader. The public is hungry for answers, but they're only being fed what the system wants them to see. A reporter stands before the building, confirming that the suspect, the elderly carer, is being treated inside following the shocking murder. The narrative is being set, framing the killer as a victim of his own circumstances. In the background, two detectives emerge from a car, surrounded by the flashes of camera bulbs. They joke about finally getting their faces on television, a casual and disturbing display of vanity in the wake of such a brutal crime. They seem completely unaware of the eyes watching them. Nearby, a man in hospital pajamas and a bandage around his head is stopped by a restricted area guard. He looks harmless, almost pathetic, as he fumbles with his belongings. He claims to have been in a traffic accident nearby and was just wandering. The man apologizes profusely, saying he was just taking notes. The detectives are annoyed and tell him to watch where he's going. One of them notices the man's pen looks a bit weird, but they ultimately let him go, thinking he's just another confused patient. As soon as he's out of sight, the man's demeanor changes. "That was too close for comfort," he mutters with a smirk. He wasn't taking notes. He was using a camera pen to record every officer present at the scene. Kurokochi Keida's network of spies is everywhere. Back at the clinic, Seek presses Kurokochi for more details. To start with, what's this Sakura Council? Kurokochi picks his nose with an air of indifference, a deliberate act to frustrate the young cop's sense of urgency. "I don't really know," he begins. Kurokochi explains that supposedly it's a secret society made up of retired and active officers from across the country. Their mission? Silencing any information that could damage the image of the police by any means necessary, including murder. Seek asks if they are the ones trying to assassinate Kurokochi. "You have to admit I did push them into it," the inspector replies with a grim chuckle. Seek is still stuck on the history. How could a robbery from the 60s be the foundation of a modern-day shadow organization? Kurokochi admits that at the time, he thought it was bullshit too. But now, with a bullet hole in his money, the bullshit is starting to look like a cold, hard fact. Overwhelmed by the scale of the conspiracy, Seek decides he needs to find his own answers. He tells Kurokochi he's leaving, his face filled with a new, grim determination. Kurokochi just watches him go, knowing that the more Seek digs, the deeper he'll fall. Night falls over the city skyline. Seek arrives at a building housing the Judiciary Research Institute. He's here to meet a man who might hold the key to his father's past, Takeshi Endo. Takashi Endo finally appears, apologizing for the wait. He mentions an endless debate in a previous meeting, his calm and collected manner suggesting a man who is used to navigating the complex waters of bureaucracy and power. Seek expresses his deep respect for Endo's work with the Police Pension Study Group. He's humbled by Endo's commitment to ensuring that those who risk their lives are properly compensated. Endo, however, remains humble, claiming it's his life's goal to support the force. The conversation turns personal. They speak of Seek's father, a man who has been gone for 6 years. Seek admits his lack of determination worries him. He's afraid he'll never be able to truly walk in his father's footsteps. Endo listens with a quiet, knowing expression. Endo has nothing but praise for the elder Seek. He recalls him as an astounding inspector, the ace of the First Division who could solve the most difficult cases in a heartbeat. "You owe him a lot," Endo says, reminding the young man of the legacy he carries. He contrasts his own bureaucratic career with the raw talent of Seek's father. Endo recounts how they were longtime friends and how an interesting case occurred right after he was assigned to the First Division, the 300 million yen robbery. Seek's ears perk up at the mention of the case that Kurokochi just brought up. The past is beginning to collide with the present. Seek takes a risk and asks Endo directly, "Have you heard of the Sakura Council?" The room suddenly feels colder. Endo's expression shifts to something inscrutable. "Excuse me?" he asks. When Seek repeats himself, Endo dismisses it coldly. "Never mind, if you don't know what it is." The shut door on the subject is deafening. Endo shifts the conversation back to the robbery case, noting that 170,000 policemen worked on it, including many high-ranking officials. Seek asks who else his father worked with. Endo names Captain Kanai and Commander Yamaji, and then Seek recalls a third name, Captain Shuru. Endo confirms they've all passed away, except for Shuru. "I see," Seek says, his mind racing. He's looking for a pattern, a connection between these men and the organization that supposedly doesn't exist. Endo watches him closely, his own secrets hidden behind a mask of professional concern. The silence between Seek and Endo is thick with unspoken history. As Endo's gaze hardens, Seek realizes that the truth about his father and the Sakura Council is far more complex and dangerous than any official record suggests. He's no longer just investigating a cold case. He's walking into a web that has been spinning since before he was born. Back at the secret clinic, Kurokochi's associate returns with a triumphant grin. "Got all the pictures from my camera pen," he exclaims, revealing a haul of every officer who set foot in the hospital. Kurokochi gazes at a newspaper mock-up with a shocking headline. "Inspector Kurokochi dies." He smirks at his own death notice, ready to use this fake obituary as a shield to begin hunting his enemies from the shadows. Back at the hidden clinic, Kurokochi Keita is far from dead. He casually looks through the photos to pick the perfect one for his own fake obituary. The man with the camera pen is nervous. He made the article as requested, but he's still worried the inspector might actually kick the bucket. Kurokochi just laughs, his voice echoing through the sterile building. "I have no idea what you're talking about," he shouts, the thrill of the deception keeping him more alive than any medicine could. But the danger isn't gone. Somewhere in the shadows, the freckled hitman still wears his police uniform, his twisted grin a silent promise that the hunt is far from over. He's a predator who has lost his prey, and he's not about to stop until the job is finished. Meanwhile, Shingo Seek is driven through the neon-lit veins of the city, his mind racing faster than the car on the highway. He repeats the names Endo mentioned. Endo, Yamaji, Kanai, and Shuru. These are the 4 high-ranking officers his father worked with on that infamous robbery case. Then, like a bolt of lightning, the truth hits him. If you take the first characters of each of their names, to Kinyama Shuru, Toyama Kinshiro, the legendary magistrate with the Sakura tattoo, the ultimate symbol of justice hidden behind a mask of indifference. The name is a code, a signature left behind by a group of men who saw themselves as the modern-day versions of the legend. The Sakura Council isn't just an organization. It's a legacy his father was a part of. Zeke's eyes are wide with a terrifying new understanding. As the car speeds into the darkness, he realizes that the simple coincidence is actually a grand, generational conspiracy. His father, the man he idolized, was a founder of the very shadow he's trying to destroy. The path ahead is no longer about justice. It's about survival in a world where even the names have teeth.